Good afternoon to our listeners on Parliament Radio 105.5 FM, our viewers on the Parliament channel, and those of you joining us via the World Wide Web, Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView, and via our website www.ttparliament.org. We welcome you to our coverage of today's sitting of the House of Representatives. As you would have just seen on our PARL notes, one bill is to be introduced, the Finance Number 3 Bill 2016. Debate is expected on 4 motions to confirm the Provisional Collection of Taxes Order, Customs Import Duty, Caribbean Common Market Amendment Order, Excise Duty Alcoholic Beverages Order.
The Honourable, the Speaker.
We welcome you to the 8th sitting of the House in the second session of the 11th Parliament that takes place on Wednesday, November 9th, 2016.
Almighty God, we give thanks to you, the Creator of the universe, and humbly beseech you to direct and prosper the deliberations of the members of this House here assembled for the advancement of your glory and the trust and welfare of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Grant that peace and happiness, truth and justice may be established among us for all generations. Amen. Amen. Namaste.
Oath or affirmation. Announcements by the Speaker.
Honorable members, Faris Alwari, MP, member for San Fernando West, has requested leave of absence from the sittings of the House during the period November 9th to 11, 2016. The leave which the member seeks is granted. Honorable members, during the Standing Finance Committee meeting, 25 ministries and departments, through the relevant minister, undertook to provide responses in writing to questions raised during the meeting. I am to advise that 21 of those responses have been received. Those responses shall be circulated to members and are also available electronically on the Rotunda application. Receipt of the outstanding responses is anticipated by Monday, November 14th, 2016. Thereafter, I shall provide the House with an update.
Bills brought from the Senate. Petitions. Papers.
The Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have the honor to lay on the table the following papers. 1 to 2. The report of the Auditor General of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago on the financial statements of the Tunapuna Piarco Regional Corporation for the years ended September 30th, 2004 and 2005. 3 to 4. The second report of the Auditor General of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago on the financial statements of the Tunapuna Piarco Regional Corporation for the years 2006 and 2007. 5 to 9. The report of the Auditor General of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago on the financial statements of the Venture Capital Incentive Program for the years ended September 30th, 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, and for the period October 1st, 2014 to August 16, 2015. 10. The report of the Auditor General of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago on the financial statements of the Regulated Industries Commission for the year ended December 31st, 2013. 11. The report of the Auditor General of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago on the statement of the recovery of expenses of the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries for the year ended December 31st, 2015. 12. The report of the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago with respect to the progress of the proposals to restructure CLICO, British American, and CLICO Investment Bank for the quarter ended September 30th, 2016. 13. The report of the operations of the National Insurance Board of Trinidad and Tobago for the financial year ended June 30th, 2015. 14. The Provisional Collection of Taxes Order 2016. 15. The Customs Import Duty Caribbean Common Market Amendment Order 2016. 16. The Excise Duty Alcoholic Beverages Order 2016. 17. The Excise Duty Tobacco Products Order 2016. I beg to move that papers 1 to 12 be referred to the Public Accounts Committee.
Honorable members, the question is that papers numbers 1 to 12 be referred to the Public Accounts Committee. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it. The Minister of Public Administration and Communications.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Public Administration and Communications, I have the honor to lay on the table the following papers. The Annual Administrative Report of the Telecommunications Authority of Trinidad and Tobago for the period October 2013 to September 2014, and the Annual Administrative Report of the National Information and Communication Technology Company Limited for the period October 2013 to September 2014.
The Minister of Rural Development and Local Government.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Rural Development and Local Government, I have the honor to lay on the table the following papers. The Administrative Report of the San Fernando City Corporation for the period 2013 to 2014. The Annual Administrative Report for Palo Seco Agricultural Enterprises Limited for the period 2013 to 2014. And the Ministerial Response to the Report of the Joint Select Committee on Human Rights, Equality and Diversity on the challenges faced by persons with disabilities, with specific focus on access to services and employment. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Minister of Community Development, Culture and Arts.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have the honor to lay on the table the following papers. The Annual Administrative Report of the Ministry of Community Development for the period 2009 to 2010, and the Annual Administrative Report of the Ministry of Arts and Multiculturalism for the period 2013 to 2014.
Minister of Energy and Energy Industries.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Energy and Energy Industries, I have the honor to lay on the table the following papers. Papers 25 to 26. The Annual Administrative Report of the Ministry of Energy and Energy Affairs for the fiscal years 2010 and 2011.
Minister of Labour and Small Enterprise Development.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Labour and Small Enterprise Development, I have the honor to lay on the table the following papers. The Annual Administrative Report of the Boiler Examiners Board for the period October 1st, 2014 to September 30th, 2015. The Annual Administrative Report of the Industrial Relations Advisory Committee for the period February 16, 2014 to February 15, 2015, and the Administrative Report of the Occupational Safety and Health Authority and Agency for the period October 2014 to September 2015. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Members, I'm hearing a constant murmur. Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have the honor to lay on the table the following papers. The Annual Report of the Statutory Authority Service Commission for the period October 2014 to September 2015. 31. The 105th report of the Salaries Review Commission. And number 34, the sessional review 2015 to 2016, first session, 11th.
The Minister of Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have the honor to lay on the table the following paper, number 32. The first report of the committee established to review the levels of healthcare delivery by the regional health authorities and to rationalize the system of public sector doctors in private practice.
The Minister of Social Development and Family Services.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have the honor to lay on the table the following paper, number 33. The second ministerial response to the second report of the Joint Select Committee on Human Rights, Equality and Diversity on the challenges faced by persons with disabilities, with specific focus on access to services and employment.
Reports from committees.
Member for Couva North.
The first report of the Joint Select Committee on Local Authorities, Statutory Authorities and Service Commissions, including the THA, on an inquiry into the Land Settlement Agency in relation to squatter regularization, second session of the 11th Parliament 2016-2017.
The Chief Whip.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On behalf of my colleague, the member for St. Augustine, the first report of the Joint Select Committee on Finance and Legal Affairs on an inquiry into the criminal case flow management in the judicial system.
Member for Laventille West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I wish to present the following report. The report of the Joint Select Committee on National Security on inquiries conducted during the first session 2015-2016 of the 11th Parliament.
Member for Faisabad.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I wish to present the following report. The first report of the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee, first session of the 11th Parliament on examination into the current expenditure of ministries and departments under three subheads: current transfers and subsidies, development program, consolidated fund, and infrastructure development fund.
Member for Shogunas East.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wish to present the following reports. First report of the Joint Select Committee on State Enterprises, first session 2015-2016 of the 11th Parliament on an inquiry into the administration and operations of the Petroleum Company of Trinidad and Tobago, Petrotrin. Second report of the Joint Select Committee on State Enterprises, first session 2015-2016 of the 11th Parliament on an inquiry into the administration and operations of the Urban Development Corporation of Trinidad and Tobago, UDCOT. Third report of the Joint Select Committee on State Enterprises, first session 2015-2016 of the 11th Parliament on an inquiry into the administration and operations of the National Gas Company of Trinidad and Tobago Limited, NGC.
Prime Minister's questions, urgent questions, questions on notice, questions for oral answer.
Member for Princess Town.
Madam Speaker, through you to the Honourable Minister of Community Development, Culture and the Arts, question number 2.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Under the Construction and Refurbishment of Community Centres program of the Ministry of Community Development, Culture and the Arts, 8 centres were completed and 1 centre was refurbished during the period October 1st, 2015 to September 30th, 2016.
Member for Princess Town.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Honourable Minister, would you be in a position to advise us where these community centres are located, in which constituencies and which areas?
Madam Speaker, the community centres completed were in Gasperillo, Santa Cruz, North Manzanilla, Beetham Gardens Community Centre, Barataria Community Centre, Palo Seco Community Centre, Lansnoir Community Centre, Upper El Dorado Community Centre, Samru Village Community Centre, and Bamboo Settlement number 3.
For Princess Town.
Madam Speaker, thank you. Honourable Minister, I noticed in the public sector investment programme that 35 million has been allocated for the construction of community centres. However, it does not address the issue of locations. Could you say whether the ministry has identified the locations, and if so, could you provide us with the information?
Question. Member for Princestown.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question number 3 to the Minister of Sport and Youth Affairs.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Sports Company of Trinidad and Tobago Limited, as a ministry implementation agency, has advised that youth sport camps were hosted during the period August 15 to the 26th. To answer the second part of the question, with respect to Part B of the question, the Sport Company of Trinidad and Tobago Limited has indicated that the cost associated with hosting the camps was $2,917,868,000.
Member for Princestown.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Honourable Minister, could you give us an idea of where these camps were located during the period of July-August vacation?
Well, there was an extensive list, Madam Speaker. I don't have it in front of me, but it was throughout Trinidad and Tobago. I could provide that for them. There was a whole press ad that took up our entire page in the newspaper listing those. It'll take us a very long time to go through that now.
Member for Princestown.
Honourable Minister, with respect to the hosting of these camps, you have identified a specific cost. Can you indicate to us, with respect to the suppliers, whether or not these suppliers went through a tendering process, or whether or not this was sole select in terms of choosing these suppliers? Because I understand that these camps really occurred in a very hurriedly fashion.
Remember, it's a question you're asking? Yes. And I would not allow that as a supplemental question.
Requests for leave.
Madam Speaker, if I may, I'd like to indicate that the question for written answer, which is question number 4, is available and will be distributed. Thank you. Is available and will be distributed.
Requests for leave to move the adjournment of the House on definite matters of urgent public importance, statements by ministers, personal explanations, introduction of bills, the Finance Number 3 Bill 2016, presented by the Minister of Finance.
Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move motion number 1 standing in my name. Sorry. Oh, I'm deeply sorry. Different to this. Madam Speaker, in accordance with Standing Order 64-1B, I beg to move that the next stage of the Finance Number 3 Bill 2016 be taken later in the proceedings.
Honourable members, the question is that the next stage of the Finance Number 3 Bill 2016 be taken later in the proceedings. All in favour say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it.
Motions relating to the business or sittings of the House and moved by a minister. Public business, government business, motions.
Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I beg to move that motion number 1 standing in my name. I beg to move motion number 1 standing in my name. Madam Speaker, in moving this motion, I seek the leave of the House by agreement in accordance with Standing Order 51 and 2 to debate along with this matter motions number 2 to 4 on the order paper which relate to the subject as well as the Finance Bill number 3, 2016.
Is this the wish of the House? It is. You may proceed, Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, whereas it is provided by Section 3.1 of the Provisional Collection of Taxes Act, Chapter 7401, hereinafter called the Act, that where proposals for general or supplementary appropriation of public funds are made to the House of Representatives and are embodied in an appropriation or supplementary appropriation bill, the President may, for the purpose of raising revenue to meet the expenditure specified in any such bill, by order, provide for the imposition of a tax or the variation of an existing tax, and from the date of the publication of the order in the Trinidad and Tobago Gazette, the tax as imposed or varied shall be payable. And whereas it is provided by Section 3(5) of the Act that an order varying an existing tax shall cease to have effect if the order is not confirmed with or without modifications by a resolution agreed to by the House within the next 21 days after the commencement of the order, and whereas the Provisional Collection of Taxes Order 2016, hereinafter referred to as the order, made under Section 3 of the Act, provided for the variation of taxes in the written laws mentioned in the order, to the extent and in the manner set out therein, for the purpose of raising revenue to meet the expenditure specified in the bill entitled, An Act to Provide for the Service of Trinidad and Tobago for the financial year ending on the 30th day of September 2017. And whereas the order was published in the Trinidad and Tobago Gazette as legal notice number 163 of 2016 on the 19th day of October 2016 and commenced on the 20th day of October 2016, and whereas it is expedient to confirm the order, be it resolved that the Provisional Collection of Taxes Order 2016 be confirmed. Madam Speaker, we are here today to deal with a number of procedural matters that are required by law in order to confirm a number of taxes that were referred to in the budget statement of 2017. And in summary, the taxes and duties involve taxes on alcohol and tobacco, taxes on income, chargeable income and chargeable profits in excess of $1 million, and taxes on online purchases, which I will explain in some detail in a little while. And in addition, in the Finance Bill number 3 of 2016, Madam Speaker, we also are making arrangements to allow for the introduction of government bonds, increasing the amount of bonds that can be in circulation at any given time, and also giving the minister the ability to adjust the rate of interest, the type of bonds. It's in the first part of the Act, Madam Speaker. It's in the first part of the Act. The bill, I'm terribly sorry. In Clause 3 of the bill, on second page of the bill, we are asking that the minister be empowered to make regulations for carrying out the purposes of the Act with respect to these government savings bonds, including the denomination of the bonds, the rates of interests, the methods of encashment, the forms, issue and recording of such bonds, the method of holding bonds, and so on. We are also increasing the quantum of bonds that can be in circulation at any given time from the current limit of $300 million to a limit of $2 billion. So that is it in summary, Madam Speaker. I will now get into some detail as to the nature of the measures before the House today. As I indicated, we are dealing with alcoholic beverages and tobacco products, online taxes, taxes on chargeable income over $1 million, commonly known as the millionaire tax, and the government bonds. And on the table, you would have the Finance Bill, number 3, the Customs Import Duty Caribbean Covered Market Resolution, the Excise Duty Alcoholic Beverages Resolution, the Excise Duty Tobacco Products Resolution, and the Provisional Collection of Taxes Resolution. All of these matters have a common theme, and they're all part of the adjustment that we as a country need to face in view of the economic situation facing the country. In fact, Madam Speaker, I was up until 4 o'clock this morning watching that very unexpected development in the United States. And
We never listen to Fuad.
when you take the implications of Brexit with what occurred in America this morning, the world economy, the outlook for the world economy is uncertain. And therefore we in Trinidad and Tobago, because for example, as I came here, Madam Speaker, I looked at the Dow index. The Dow index has dropped 750 points just today alone. So that the whole situation is uncertain. As we go forward, we will see what happens. But the fact of the matter is that we have to be very, very careful as a small, open economy going forward, facing serious challenges, facing depressed commodity prices, facing declining production of oil and gas, so that these measures are part of the budget exercise and they were dealt with in the budget statement. It is an intention, when you look at the various motions and the bill, the intention is to try and spread the burden of adjustment across the society. We, on this side, Madam Speaker, and we as a people, cannot allow the burden to just fall on one group alone. So it is now an opportune time to widen and deepen the tax net throughout Trinidad and Tobago. And it's for that specific purpose that the tax on chargeable income exceeding $1 million or on chargeable profits exceeding $1 million has been imposed, the additional 5% rate of tax. Perhaps, Madam Speaker, before I go any further, this might be an opportune time. There was a conference in Trinidad and Tobago last week dealing with the challenges facing.
Members, please, let's observe the standing orders. Let's start on that premise. Continue, please, Minister of Finance.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. There was a conference in Trinidad and Tobago last week designed to deal with the challenges facing Trinidad and Tobago and the economies of the Caribbean. And during that conference, Madam Speaker, I made certain statements, and on reflection and having reviewed and looked at the Madam Speaker.
Members, just advise that the standing orders are going to be strictly enforced. We are here over a year now, so everyone is taking to understand the standing orders. Please continue, Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Having looked at the tape of the comments that I made and the manner in which I made them, I realized that this would have upset a lot of people. And therefore, I take this opportunity to unreservedly apologize to all affected.
Members, member for Bhoendradatt and Samoa, I'm on my legs. I just want to also advise members, while desk thumping is allowed, if it's excessively long or excessively noisy, I can consider it disorderly. Please be guided accordingly. Continue, please, Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Now, let us look carefully at what we are doing, because I saw some commentary in the public domain recently, and it tells me there's a misunderstanding of a number of pieces of legislation that have been used for years in this Parliament during the appropriation bill. And I think it is necessary to remind members of the provisions of the Provisional Collection of Taxes Act. The Provisional Collection of Taxes Act was designed to allow a government to vary taxes or impose new taxes, and I'll read the long title, an act respecting the imposition or variation of taxation by statutory instruments for the purpose of the provisional collection of taxes. And this act, which, as I said, has been in force since 1963, allows a government during an appropriation debate, a debate on the budget, to vary taxes and impose new taxes. And the order that flows from the budget debate is covered by Section 3 of this Act. And it's necessary to read Section 3 of this Act based on comments I saw in particular from the Leader of the Opposition that the collection of the online tax was unlawful. Online. So subject to the provisions of this Act, where proposals for general or supplementary appropriation of public funds are made to the House of Representatives and are embodied in an appropriation or supplementary appropriation bill, as the case may be, the President may, for the purpose of raising revenue to meet the expenditure specified in any such bill, by order, provide for the imposition of any tax or the variation of any tax from the date of the publication of the order in the Gazette. In the case of the imposition of any tax under subsection 1, the order shall, subject to the provisions of this Act, have effect for a period expiring at the end of 4 months after the commencement of the order. But most importantly, Madam Speaker, Section 3(5) states, an order varying an existing tax shall cease to have effect if the order is not confirmed with or without modifications by a resolution agreed to by the House within the next 21 days after the commencement of the order, and where any provision of the order is deleted by the resolution, that provision shall cease to have effect. And so, Madam Speaker, on the 19th of October, during the debate on the appropriation bill, I caused to be published the Provisional Collection of Taxes Order. And in this order was imposed an online purchase tax. It is Legal Supplement Part B, Volume 55, number 118, 19th of October 2016. And it came into effect on 20th October 2016. Because you can publish the order on one day and it can take effect on another day. But it must take effect during the budget debate. So this Provisional Collection of Taxes Order 2016 created the online purchase tax, which reads as follows. A tax called the online purchase tax shall be charged on the value of a good which is purchased by means of an electronic transaction, imported into Trinidad and Tobago by air transportation, consigned to a consumer, and entered from a transit shed. The rate of the online tax is 7% of the value of a good and is payable by the importer. And consumer has the meaning assigned to it in Section 2 of the Electronic Transactions Act. An electronic transaction has the meaning assigned to it also in Section 2 of the Electronic Transaction Act, and entered has the meaning assigned to it in Section 2 of the Customs Act. Importer has the meaning assigned to it in the Customs Act. Value of a good means the value determined in accordance with the 6th schedule of the Customs Act. Transit shed has the meaning assigned to it in the Section 2 of the Customs Act. The tax authority will be the controller of customs and excise, and the controller may exercise powers for the collection, enforcement, and management of duty under the Customs Act in respect of the online purchase tax with respect to any other written law. In addition, in this Provisional Collection Taxes Order, there was also imposed on tobacco products, cigars, cheroots, cigarillos, cigarettes, etc., new taxes. Cigars, the rate of tax was increased to $30.16 per kilogram. Cigarettes, $4.38 per pack of 20. Other types of tobacco, $4.38 per pack of 20. Water pipe tobacco, $57.25 per kilogram. And any other type of tobacco, $57.25 per kilogram. So that having published this on the 19th of October, we had 21 days to confirm this order. And that is what we are about. So the online tax became effective immediately based on the provisions of the Provisional Collection of Taxes Order. And in order for it to continue, we must we must confirm the order by way of one of the motions before the House. That is, in fact, resolution number 1. In addition, Madam Speaker, a number of other orders were published, and I can go through them. The Excise Duty Tobacco Products Order 2016, the Excise Duty Alcoholic Beverages Order 2016, the Customs Common External Tariff Amendment Order 2016 dealing with alcoholic beverages, and the Customs Import Duty Caribbean Common Market Amendment Order 2016, again dealing with alcoholic beverages. So in addition to the Provisional Collection of Taxes Order, which dealt with the online purchase tax and one of the taxes on tobacco, we had these other orders which dealt with the other taxes on tobacco. And let me explain. Excise is a duty that is charged on goods that are locally manufactured. So that cigarettes that are locally manufactured would attract excise duty. Alcoholic beverages like beer and rum that are locally manufactured would attract excise duty. Cigarettes are manufactured abroad that are imported will attract import duty. And alcoholic beverages that are manufactured abroad and imported will attract import duty. So you have the two types of duties. One is excise and one is customs import on alcoholic beverages and tobacco products. And the effective increases are more or less in the range of approximately 20%, Madam Speaker, in terms of these taxes and duties. There is one exception, and I have received representation from the Chamber of Commerce on this, and that is what is commonly referred to as box wine. There was I wouldn't want to call it a loophole, but there was a provision in the law that allowed wine in containers of 2 liters or more to be charged a minimal duty of just $1.50 per liter. So if you had a 3-liter container of wine, which is sold in places like Price Smart and so on, the duty on that might have been just about $5. Whereas your typical bottle of wine, which is a 75 centiliter bottle, or 750 milliliter bottle, would attract a duty of about $48 to $50. So that you had this anomaly where the duty on per liter on the box wine, same wine, was $1.50 per liter, and the duty on the bottle wine, the typical bottle that you would buy, was almost $50 a liter. So you had, again, an anomaly where a typical bottle of wine would retail in a supermarket like Hilo for $100, and you could also get a 3-liter box of wine for $100 because of the almost non-existent duty on it. So we thought it was necessary to plug this loophole. We have had representation from the Chamber, and I do anticipate we may get representation from people in the hospitality industry. So I am seriously considering, and of course the people in the Ministry of Finance will have to advise me. They have asked us to waive the increase in tax on the box wine for the Christmas period and the period up to New Year's, because there's a lot of stock that would have been on its way already in the country at the time the orders were imposed. And I am giving serious consideration to it. Of course, that will be a cabinet decision. So I've received representation from the chamber on that. Now, let us move on, Madam Speaker. I have indicated, I can go through with the specific terms, that I can go through the specific acts. Let's deal specifically with the Excise Act. And Section 13 of the Excise Act states, the minister may by order impose any new excise duty or increase any excise duty, and from the date of the publication of the order in the Gazette until the expiry of the order, the duties specified in the order shall be payable in lieu of the duties payable prior thereto, provided that every order issued under this subsection shall, after 4 days and within 21 days from the date of its publication, be submitted to Parliament, and Parliament may by resolution confirm, amend, or revoke the order. So that is the provision in the Excise Act that tells you that when you publish these types of orders during an appropriation debate, you have 21 days to come to the House to confirm or amend or revoke the orders. Customs has a virtually identical provision. Section 7 of the Customs Act indicates that the President may by order increase or reduce any import or export duty, impose new or import or export duties, and from the date of publication of the order in the Gazette and until the expiry of the order, the duties specified in the order shall be payable in lieu of any duties payable prior thereto. And then, as we go over, it indicates in Section 7.2, an order issued by the President under Section 7 shall, after 4 days and within 21 days from the date of its first publication, be submitted to Parliament, and Parliament may by resolution confirm, amend, or revoke such order. And if the order is not submitted within the period, it shall ipso facto expire. So the orders were published on the 20th. The provisional collection of taxes order was the 19th, but to take effect on the 20th. And the other orders were published on the 20th. And therefore, this House has until the 11th or the 12th of this month, November, to confirm these orders. Otherwise, the orders lapse. Now, let's look at exactly what we are trying to do. Let me go through the online tax in some detail, because there's been a lot of misunderstanding with respect to the application of that tax. If you go to the provisional collection of taxes order, you will see that the tax is imposed on goods purchased by means of an electronic transaction. And if you go to the Electronic Transactions Act, what you will see is that an electronic transaction is a transaction that is done over an electronic system or by means of an electronic communication. So, simply put, this would be a transaction that takes place over the internet. Imported into Trinidad and Tobago by air transportation, we felt we would limit it to air at this time because this is a new tax. It's embryonic. We're not sure exactly what will occur, but we're monitoring it. So we decided not to widen it to include goods brought in by sea, because there are a lot of people in the diaspora who send items, clothing, household effects, and so on, to their families in Trinidad and Tobago in a barrel, the typical barrel shipment that comes by sea. So we felt that that would be basically people at the lower end of the income spectrum. So we felt we would not impose this tax on goods imported by sea at this time. The goods also have to be consigned to a consumer. A consumer is essentially an individual who is the end user of the product. So if you are bringing it in, if you're a small business, for example, and this is one of the misunderstandings outside there, if you're a small business and you're importing raw materials or you're importing finished products, you're bringing in finished products for distribution and sale to others, you are not subject to this tax. This tax is imposed on consumers. So it is the individual who imports the good for his or her own personal use. And that is defined in the Electronic Transactions Act. And then it's entered from a transit shed. So this would be through by way of a courier company, where they would have a shed that is a bonded warehouse where the goods are brought in and kept until they fulfill all the customs requirements in terms of documentation and payment of taxes, and then they're released. So if I can recap, this tax is for goods brought in by air, it's for goods purchased over the internet, it's for goods intended to be used by the importer, the person bringing them in, or the end user of the product, that's a better way to say it, and goods that will be entered from a transit shed. And we have put the rate of 7% on this tax. I don't have detailed figures, Madam Speaker. I do know that in the first 10 days, about $1 million was collected, but that was the beginning of the tax. That would put it at about $3 or $4 million for the first month. The estimate we had given was closer to $5 or $6 million for the month on an average going through the year to yield $70 million. But as it goes along and people get a better understanding of how this tax is to be imposed and on what and for what purpose and by whom, then we should see the revenue settle down. I may say that if anybody has imported something from Amazon or any one of these online retailers, when they get their product, when they get the box, they would see on it a slip that indicates freight, insurance, handling, value-added tax, import duty, and now you will see online tax. And as I said, this is embryonic. The customers will have to use their discretion. It's very similar to the suitcase trade. You know, people's suitcases may be inspected at the airport when they come in. Customs opens it up, or they put it through the scanner, and they see 20 pairs of pants. It's on the value of the good. It's on the value of the good. So it's on the value of the good landed. Okay? And the other charges obviously would be imposed after that, the CIF value. Let's put it that way. Sure, and are very close. So that, yeah. So, Madam Speaker, as we go along, we will see how this tax works. Let me now come to the tax on persons, the taxes on higher income. It is agreed, Madam Speaker, that over the years we've seen an increase in income inequality in both developed and developing countries. In fact, what happened in America last night may have a lot to do with income inequality. In an attempt to address this, the US President Obama, the current one, introduced an income tax surcharge on high income in 2013. And in the following year, he refused to introduce tax relief on high income earners that were enacted by former President Bush. Even in this election, that American election, Madam Speaker, you saw the differing positions taken by the differing candidates, and one candidate talking about tax relief for high income earners, another one talking about imposing taxes on high income earners. But the fact is, well, that was for a different reason. The fact is that during a boom period, the rich normally benefit the most via capital gains through investments in the stock markets and so on. And corporations' profits have a lot to do with infrastructure provided by the government, provided by taxpayers. The majority of tax breaks go to the rich. So that we felt, and low-wage earners, except persons in Trinidad and Tobago, we've enacted a situation where if you're earning $6,000 or less, you pay no tax at all. But persons between $6,000 and what you would consider to be very high income pay a much higher percentage of their income in taxes. So that we felt in the totality of the circumstances, when we're asking everybody in the country to adjust, that we felt it is time that we introduce this incremental marginal rate of tax on persons who earn in excess of $1 million chargeable income per year. And the calculations show, believe it or not, that we may earn up to $80 million from this tax alone. It just goes to show how many people in this country are earning chargeable incomes of $1 million or more. With respect to corporations, the calculations show we could get in excess of $500 million. In fact, the number I have is $560 million from corporations that earn profits in excess of $1 million per year. And while on that, we have to try innovative things, Madam Speaker. For example, we introduced a tax amnesty in 2016. And yesterday I spoke to the Board of Inland Revenue and I asked them what was the yield from the tax amnesty, and you'd be surprised. $750 million is what we earned from the tax amnesty in 2016. It goes to show quite a few people outside there not paying their taxes. And it goes to show that if we did not do that, we'd have been in bigger trouble in 2016 in terms of balancing our budget. So that measure worked exceedingly well as far as we are concerned on this side. With respect to the effect of the new taxes on alcohol and tobacco, what struck me, I'm not a smoker, but what struck me was the price of cigarettes in Trinidad and Tobago and in the Caribbean. In Trinidad and Tobago, a pack of 20 Tewarie with the tax, $25. In Jamaica, Caroni, which I'm told is an equivalent, $52. And I am converting all of this to Trinidad and Tobago dollars. So in Trinidad and Tobago, a pack of Tewarie, $25, and the equivalent in Jamaica in TT dollars, $52. In Barbados, a pack of Marlboro, 20, converted to TT dollars, $50. And in Grenada, a pack of Pall Mall, converted to TT dollars, $25. So we are now the same as Grenada and half of the cost of cigarettes in Jamaica and in Barbados. Alcohol is different. In terms of beer, we are now slightly above Jamaica, Barbados, and Grenada. That's $1 or $2 per bottle. But in terms of rum, I found this interesting. The cost of Old Oak, 750 milliliters, $90 a bottle, whereas Appleton rum of similar variety in Jamaica is $130. In Grenada, Clark's Court, Old Grog, $105, and in Barbados, Mount Gay is approximately $80. So the rum, we are sort of at the bottom end. Some of the other countries are a bit higher. The beer, we are a little bit above. The whiskey surprised me. Johnny Walker Black Label whiskey in Trinidad and Tobago with the new prices, $220 for a bottle. Black Label, Johnny Walker Black Label whiskey. Barbados, Johnny Walker Black Label whiskey is $385, converted to TT for the same thing. And in Grenada, Johnny Walker Black Label is $412, converted for the same thing. What we were seeking to is to harmonize our prices in line with the rest of the region. And we've got there in some form or fashion. And of course, it's an effort to increase revenue. So, Madam Speaker, I have addressed the millionaire tax, which is to allow the spreading of the burden. The increased taxes on tobacco and alcohol are to try and earn as much revenue as possible while not pricing Trinidad and Tobago out of the market. And this is something we will keep a close eye on. In fact, I've received complaints from manufacturers of local beer that they are being subjected to unfair competition by importers of foreign beer. And it is something I'm looking into at this point in time, that people may very well be dumping beer here in Trinidad and Tobago. I don't know. I'm told that there are beer wars in other countries, yes, in the Caribbean. I'm told it's happened in Barbados, it happened in St. Lucia. I've heard there are beer wars, so that large beer producers bring in their product at a very low price, they dump it to drive the local manufacturers out of the business. So it's something I have received representation from the largest manufacturer of beer in the country. This would be Carib, and I'm looking at it very, very closely to see whether there's merit in the complaint and what we in the government can do about this complaint. So I think, Madam Speaker, I have addressed virtually everything that is in the motions and in the bill. And with those few words, I beg to move.
Honourable members, I shall now propose the question. Be it resolved that the Provisional Collection of Taxes Order 2016 be confirmed. And I wish to remind members that leave has been granted for motions numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4, and for the bill to be debated together. Member for Caroni Central.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I listened to the presentation of the Minister of Finance, and basically he understated the bill in terms of presenting what it was meant to be for, what it was meant to be about, and not addressing at all how these measures were likely to impact on citizens and on the society. Before I go on, I want to take the opportunity to congratulate the new President of the United States of America on his election by democratic process to the seat of President of that important country. I hope that his term of office would be constructive and fruitful and impact positively on the world system and on the United States of America itself. Today, however, we are here to debate Finance Bill number 3, 2016, as one part of a two-part set of bills and motions that we are debating today. The Finance Bill number 3 calls for amendments to the Government Savings Bond Act, Chapter 7141, the Income Tax Act, Chapter 7501, the Corporation Tax Act, Chapter 7502, and the Miscellaneous Taxes Act, 7701, Chapter 7701. These four amendments, that's to say the amendments to each of these bills, give life to the measures that were outlined by the Minister of Finance in the 2017 budget and that now require, therefore, legislation. We are also dealing, as the Minister pointed out, with four motions, and by consensus we have agreed to debate all of these together. And those four motions are to confirm the Provisional Collection of Taxes Order 2016 so that the Minister of Finance can collect his taxes imposed in the budget of 2017. We are also here to confirm the Customs Import Duty Caribbean Common Market Amendment Order 2016 so that the 7% online tax can be legitimized. We are also here to confirm the excise duty Alcoholic Beverages Order 2016 in order to impose a tax on alcohol. And we are here to confirm the excise duty Tobacco Products Order 2016, which imposes a tax on tobacco. These amendments to the various laws to effect 2017 policy decisions of the government and the motions before the House taken together focus on tax impositions on citizens and on businesses to generate revenue. There is also, of course, a bond to promote savings, but which as well means that the government will be borrowing from citizens with a promise to pay with interest by a certain date. So these matters that we are discussing here today, therefore, are really tax measures which reveal, in my view, no particular philosophy or policy orientation of the government. In other words, they are tax measures for revenue, and they are borrowing measures of a certain kind. And they represent no philosophy or policy position of the government that I can discern. And I say this not as a criticism, but as a fact. There is a strategy, though, in the presentation of these motions and this bill, and that is to increase revenue for the government of Trinidad and Tobago. And the savings bonds, as I mentioned earlier, is also a borrowing measure to make money available to government to spend on goods and services and projects, Madam Speaker. This is consistent with the tax and borrow strategy of the government. In word and deed, they said they would do this, and they are actually doing it over the last year and 2 months in Trinidad and Tobago. So there is a strategy for revenue. It is to tax, it is to borrow. Taxing and borrowing has been the approach of this government over the last 14 months, and taxes and debt accumulation both ultimately impact the taxpayer and the citizen. We have this notion that there is a state in this country, and we have this notion that there is the government. But the government, as stewards of the state, get their money from the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. And when a government borrows money or raises revenue or spends money, it is the citizens' money that they are dealing with in the public place. Taxes mean that you have to pay more for what you buy or pay more directly to the government. Both have the effect of reducing any discretionary income which remains. Now, you may say that some of the measures here include the application of choice about discretionary income, tobacco, alcohol, online purchases. But still, imposing a tax on these does take from the pool of funds that a wage earner brings home after paying other taxes as well, and therefore it does impact on what choices that individual citizen has before him or her as they engage the other necessities of life, including food and shelter. In the case of debt accumulation by the state, it is ultimately the citizens who have to repay the debt. I want to emphasize that. However you borrow, it is ultimately the citizens who have to repay the debt, because the debts have to be repaid. So citizens of Trinidad and Tobago need to pay very careful attention to what their government is doing in terms of taxation, in terms of debt accumulation and in terms of the time frame for debt accumulation and what that implies for when payback time comes. Because what the government is doing today affects their pockets directly in terms of taxes and affects their pockets later in terms of payback. Some of these taxes also affect businesses, and the 5% on taxes on profits beyond $1 million calls into question government's philosophical position towards entrepreneurship, business creation, and business growth and development. The online tax, too, compounds the questions that one can ask about government's approach and attitude to business. Bear in mind that we now have a 12.5% across-the-board tax on citizens as well as businesses with the reimposition of VAT. We must not forget that that was one of the early decisions of this government, which imposed a 12.5% tax on businesses as well as individuals on all purchases in the system. Bear in mind that we also have as well an increase in the Green Levy Fund, which affects most businesses in Trinidad and Tobago. Bear in mind that we also have an increase in NIS contribution. There are benefits, of course, that go with it, but there is an increase. Bear in mind that gas prices are higher at the pump than they were 14 months ago. Bear in mind as well that property tax is coming, Madam Speaker. So it is in this context that we must view all of these tax measures being imposed on citizens and businesses within the space of 14 months. This is an important fact to note, the time frame, and especially so, and especially poignant when citizens remember that 14 months ago, they had almost all of their food items rated as 0. And that was so over much of the last 5 years. It wasn't for all of the 5 years, but much of it. Bear in mind also that citizens experienced 5 years of effective, productive government under the Kamla Persad-Bissessar government without a single tax being raised in Trinidad and Tobago between 2010 and 2015. So this government is after revenue generation by one means or the other. It wants money to spend. The government came into office and were very vexed when there was no loose cash flowing around when they came into office in September 2015.
That's what they said.
There were foreign reserves for a year of import cover. There was the HSF, which had grown and which was very much intact. But there was no loose cash. Cash flow had to be managed. Yes, what was required in these 14 months was careful and methodical management. That was the major challenge. Even Prime Minister Rowley, in one of his speeches, said so. He acknowledged that the big challenge that the government faced in a context in which the price of energy products had been substantially reduced and in which production had also been reduced, that the big challenge was the issue of cash flow management. But with strong foreign reserves, a buffer in the form of the HSF, good geological prospects for increased oil and gas flow, that is to say production, in 2017 and 18, fiscal space could have been created in those 14 months that this government has been in office. Cash flow could have been better and more effectively managed over the last year. We could be in a situation, if those things were done, in which we would have greater optimism in the country. We would have better, if we had had more and better targeted decisions, especially in energy, but also in other parts of the economy. And we would have had some projects going by now, 14 months later. We would have been building confidence in the business community and in the consumer community at large, the citizens. We would have been attracting investment. We would have been creating jobs instead of losing them. And we would have been building business and consumer confidence that would have led to some buoyancy in the economy of Trinidad and Tobago, now in deep recession. But no. What we had instead was malice, spite, invective, propaganda, untruths, spin. That was the option the government chose over the last 14 months. Hot and sweaty from September on, and simmering down now. It seems that reality has hit everybody in Trinidad and Tobago. And so here we are with nothing happening in the economy, and taxes on citizens and on businesses defining what is essentially a clueless strategy going forward. Here is a government that would rather please the IMF than serve its citizens and pay them the respect that they deserve. But the taxes, let's get back to the taxes. Let me begin with the 7% tax on online sales. This is what it says in the bill itself, that it will introduce a new tax called the online purchase tax as a measure to manage foreign exchange outflows. The online purchase tax would be charged at the rate of 7% on the value of the good, including cost, insurance, and freight, what they call CIF. But let's look at the insertion to make the tax real. Isn't that, I think, a slogan at the present time of the government and ruling party, to make it real? But let's look at the insertion that they put into the bill. That is your slogan, make it real. What are you doing to make this tax real so people could really feel it in their pockets? Let us look at the amendment. When you look at the amendment, what you see is anything purchased by means of an electronic transaction, okay? Then anything imported into Trinidad and Tobago by air transportation. Then it says consigned to a consumer, and the minister emphasized that it was a consumer tax. And entered from a transit shed, which he explained as being temporarily in the customs unit, so to speak, for transfer to the customer. Now, when you look at that, is this not really an air freight tax? Isn't this not an air freight tax, pure and simple? What are the implications for air freight in energy, in equipment, in drugs? Now, the minister said that businesses are exempt from this, but I don't understand how you are going to make those distinctions in the customs about how and who is taxed on this matter. What are the implications for small as opposed to large businesses? What about young and new entrepreneurs who perhaps have not incorporated a company and they are importing things that have to do with their business enterprises? What will happen to their situation? And there are many of those in Trinidad and Tobago. The younger group of people coming out of the university, many of them are not in jobs that you could consider formal, permanent jobs. They like to move around, they like to be entrepreneurial, they like to do things, they like to fiddle around with ICT, and they are global in their perspective. And these people make a significant contribution to the economy, not only by not competing for jobs, but in fact being entrepreneurial, creating businesses, and in fact providing jobs themselves. Now, what about the local air freight and logistics industry also? Isn't that an industry, when you take policy measures, you have to consider all the facts. For instance, if you are looking at education and you're looking at the cost of education, you can't only look at education as a local good or service. You also have to look at it, what are its possibilities for creating an export trade out of education if you have good quality education in this country. And so too, in this situation, if you have an air freight industry that is beginning to emerge, that is beginning to grow, if you have a logistics industry that is beginning to grow, if you have a strategy, as indeed this government has, supported by the IDB, for the expansion of services, exports from Trinidad and Tobago, then these things need to be taken into account holistically, because you cannot do things that would impact on other strategies that have been set in motion. And I want to say, I do not see how there was any serious thinking through of the implication of this 7% tax on the consumer, and possibly, depending on how it emerges, as on business as well. Now, Honorable Speaker, through you, I want to ask...
Member, would that device please go outside and stop disturbing the proceedings, please? Thank you.
Yeah, because you're tone deaf. Honorable Speaker.
Member, I know you may have been a bit perturbed by being disturbed, but please continue and don't be discourteous.
No,
you know, one bad act doesn't deserve another. Please continue, please.
Through you, Honorable Speaker, I want to ask the Honorable Minister, do you really think that this tax will save foreign exchange and save the local industry, retail industry? Because that was one of the rationales given for this particular tax. When you add 7% on value, or on the value of the product, on the insurance and the freight costs, is that not a severe penalty on the consumer? Wasn't all of this globalization and open economies and the use of credit card to do online purchasing, wasn't all of that meant to open up choice and to bring the consumer in Trinidad and Tobago into the global economic system? In terms of the small entrepreneur or small business for equipment or goods input into his or her business, is it not an unnecessary imposition and a problem? But let us take this question of a credit card. What is a credit card for if you can't do international transactions without a penalty? Why do people have credit cards? And if you are a businessman and can't get foreign exchange because of government mismanagement of the foreign exchange situation, and you then pay by credit card, and you need things quickly, isn't that then a greater cost and more stress for you? Now, I know, Minister, that you said that businesses are not affected by this, but I hope that in your reply, if that is so, you would make it loud and clear. So if a gentleman in my constituency, for instance, has a hardware or a manufacturing enterprise, and they want to make purchases using their credit card, and it comes and it's now an input either into their retail establishment or into their manufacturing establishment, I want you to say loud and clear so that the whole world knows that this person will not have to pay their 7% tax on goods that are imported. Because you see, in one shot, government mismanagement is making it difficult for an individual to get foreign exchange on the one hand. Government is imposing a tax of 7% on the gross arrival cost of the product. Government is affecting your cost structure if you are a retailer or a manufacturer or services provider, and making you less competitive and causing the consumer to pay more all at once, one shot. What is this, if this is true? And if it is not true, I would be happy to take back what I said and let all business people know that they can use their credit card, purchase their stuff without the imposition of a single percentage of tax. And why is there no tax if you sea freight your product? If you are having a tax meant to bring in revenue, and you are imposing a tax on a poor little consumer and possibly small businesses, why are you not imposing a tax on sea freight? Could it possibly be that you are protecting big business by killing out small businesses? I need clarity on that. Would this be fair? Can this be justified? And the information is clear. The information available is clear. Big importers are using up all the foreign exchange in the first place. So they get all the foreign exchange they want, and they pay no taxes on their sea freight, bringing goods to Trinidad and Tobago. But if the ordinary citizen uses their credit card because they can't get foreign exchange, and if the individual citizen uses the credit card because they can't get foreign exchange because it is a convenience, then that imposition is on the individual consumer. So I think this needs to be cleared, because the minister talked about equity in talking about the $1 million tax, the tax of 5% on those earning above $1 million. And he talked about the issue of equity. And if we're really interested in equity, then we must explain why there is no sea freight tax as there is an air freight tax, and what is the implication of that for equity in the country. Now, we have a situation in which the government is stimulating no investment in this country. The government has created an environment in which confidence is at an all-time low. And when people are willing to take... Yes?
Your original 30 minutes are up. You're entitled to 15 more minutes extension.
I'd be grateful to have it.
Much obliged. You may continue.
You're creating an environment in which confidence is an all-time low. And when people are taking a risk to be entrepreneurial, to create a business, provide a service, they are now possibly being discouraged. I hope that your entrepreneurship policy is not to kill startups, that your small business policy is not to stifle them, small businesses, and to make them die, and that your medium-sized business policy is not to stunt them and make them uncompetitive by increasing costs. I know from what is happening today that your national policy is to shrink the pie, mash up business, create unemployment, keep workers poor, dismantle the middle class, take away from the poor and the vulnerable, and make people cry from stress. There are instances reported in the daily press where people have taken their lives because they are unable to cope, or fall into despair because they are unable to see hope. And I am not trying to be sensational here, and I don't mean to be sensational, but I am making the point that when you make policy and when you have a strategy of government which impacts on people, and you say you are interested in equity, then that must manifest itself by the way it impacts on ordinary people and the lives that they live. This is a government not just of taxes and inaction, not just a government that is interested in amassing debt, over 60% now at the present time. It is also a government of hopelessness, despair, and death. We have an uncontrollable situation with murders. We have escalating despair in the society. The government taking what little people have and giving nothing in return. And then to add insult to injury, they are insulting you, the citizen of this country, frontally, giving contract to their friends, making payments to their wives, deals with party financiers.
Member, I think you would want to say that in a different way. I think you running very close to imputing improper motives. I couldn't say so, and I wouldn't like to be brought into the debate. Just please.
Making payments to their, giving contracts to their friends, making payments to those who are close to them, it is reported, making deals with party financiers, and taxing the citizen, and creating a situation in which, for the citizen, it comes down to 0, 0, 0. I want to go on to the three other things in the bill, which are the corporate tax, the increase in personal income tax, that's to say the tax on income tax beyond $1 million, and raising the bond and increasing the limit. On the corporate income tax, I want to say this. I don't know how much it takes to make $1 million in profit, but it would seem to me that you'd have to have a significant investment of some kind. You'd have to work very hard, you'd have to organize yourself, and to make that $1 million in profit. And the additional 5% on the money beyond $1 million that you make in profit, I think is a real disincentive to business. Yeah. You do not impose taxes willy-nilly like that, especially when profitable businesses that increase their profits and do well, create more jobs, create more impact on the economy, and make a big difference in the lives of people. So I do not understand the thinking of the 5% imposition on taxes beyond $1 million. The people who own gas stations in this country, the Petroleum Dealers Association, I think they call themselves, I am sure they have sent what I have in my hand to the Minister of Finance. And they are complaining about their margins. They already have all the taxes that I mentioned, including green levy, unemployment tax, etc., all the things that people pay. And they are complaining about the margins. And they are in a situation which some say they are likely to collapse. I would urge the minister to please make some time to read this if you have not done it already, because I know the minister is diligent, I know he does his work. If you have not read it already, I wish you would read it, meet with the people, and try and deal with this. Because I don't know if you can make $1 million a year in the gas station, but I would hate to think that after squeezing them on the margins, that if they do well, or you change the margin and they begin to do well, you're now going to impose a tax on them on the money that they make beyond $5 million, beyond $1 million. The final thing I want to deal with, and I'm sure, how much time do I have, Madam Speaker?
9 minutes. 9 minutes.
Okay, I will close on this one. I would simply say that I have no problem with the 5% tax on the income over $1 million. I think people who... No, income, personal income, I tell you, tone deaf. So I have no problem with that, because if you earn $1 million, it is reasonable to ask you to pay a little more taxes. I don't have a problem with that. And it's only on the differential from the million. But I think in both the corporation taxes and the individual income tax, it is possible to manipulate the income so it doesn't quite reach the million. And I raised that with the minister because it's going to become a reality, because you don't want to have policy decisions and tax measures which move people towards tax evasion and using the laws and loopholes in order to not pay their fair share of taxes. And then the issue of raising the bond. The only issue I want to raise with that is that savings bond is a good idea, and I don't have a problem with savings bond. It encourages people to save. They get a little more money in the bond than they would get in the bank. But this is a borrowing measure. It is not just that you are urging people to save and facilitating them. You are also moving the limit from 300 million, to 2 billion, which is a sizable amount. And you also already had, through the measures that you brought in this House, increased the loan ceiling under the External Loans Act, increased the debt limit under the Guarantee of Loans Act. And if I'm not mistaken, you also increased the borrowings available to state enterprises, the total amount being about $50 billion. You have already raised loans on the international market. $1 billion with a German bank, I know, was done. Approximately $1 billion here in Trinidad and Tobago in local currency. And here you are again using this thing in order to raise debt financing, essentially. And the issue I'm raising is not just that you are having a savings bond, is that you are moving it from $300 million to $2 billion, so that you are creating a window of opportunity for more and more borrowings. If you look carefully at the debt, with all the charges that have been made against the Kamala Persad-Bissessar government during their time in office, you will see that in 14 months, the percentage of debt increase is higher than the debt increase during the entire 5 years of the last government. Those are the facts, and you can check them out, and it is the absolute truth. And you're talking about what the revenue measures will yield. You talk about $70 million in one case, $80 million in another case. I congratulate you on the $500 million you raised through the amnesty, the $750 you raised under the amnesty. But I do not think that your figures might turn out to be correct. I hope they are, so that you get the revenue. But I do not know if that, in fact, will be true.
Would the member with the electronic device please leave the chamber?
But I would urge the Honorable Minister, through you, Madam Speaker, that he focus on what is happening in the energy industry. There are many issues to resolve there that have serious implications for the future of this country. And if they are not resolved, and these things are time-bound, you're going to have a very, very difficult time as a minister, and we in this country are going to have a very, very difficult time in terms of investments foregone. I want to urge the minister to focus on the services industry, which is being funded by the IDB, which is focused on exports, and has a very good chance of bringing foreign exchange to this country in rather quick time, using young people who have the skills and the disposition to do this. I would urge the minister to focus on serious diversification in areas where they are possible. Services is one of them, tourism is another, etc. I would urge the minister to deal with the BIR, the Board of Inland Revenue, which has just been closed down because of health and safety issues. When that happened to the CSO, your then opposition party was in glee. We are in no glee. We know that revenue is an important thing, and we want the BIR to be able to work and collect their money, but I would focus on that. I would also focus, as I said before, on the petroleum dealers to bring some peace in that sector. Look how many problems we have in the energy sector. We have in the petroleum dealers, we have in the downstream industry related to that. We have national gas as an entity, and then we have the producers' issues, which involve a number of complex issues to be resolved. This is our mainstay in the economy. If you want revenue, deal with that industry and deal with the services industry for diversification, and deal with the investment so that strong businesses can pay strong taxes to the coffers of the state in Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you very much, Madam.
Member for Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I think it is appropriate at this stage, after hearing the contribution from my colleague from Caroni Central, to remind the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago that one of the roles of a government is, in fact, to raise revenue and to balance that revenue as against the expenditure. And having said that, we're here today to deal with some revenue raising revenue enhancement initiatives on the part of the Minister of Finance and this government. But to put it in a contextual framework, Madam Speaker, if you would permit me, I'd like to remind our citizens and those in this chamber about the serious matters that face us as a country, not as a government, but as a people of Trinidad and Tobago, with respect to our revenue. And our revenue over the past couple years has decreased. So our revenue from oil and gas, and we, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, know that there are really two areas that we raise revenue for the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago: oil and gas, and then through taxation. No one in this chamber, and in fact, no one in the country, can say with any semblance of credibility that oil and gas prices have not dropped significantly from 2014 to date. And what that means for our oil and gas revenue in Trinidad and Tobago is between 2014 and 2016, annual revenues from petroleum dropped from 17.6 billion, dropped by 17.6 billion, or 92%. Any business person, Madam Speaker, who faces a drop in their revenue of 92% would know the seriousness of the circumstances. So move aside oil and gas, because Trinidad and Tobago is not in a position, Madam Speaker, to influence or to increase the prices of oil and gas. We also know as a country, Madam Speaker, that there's declining production in our oil sector. So our oil is at an all-time low from a production point of view. We're now down to about 66,000 barrels a day, when it used to be a high of over 100,000 barrels. And what this government has done for the first time, Madam Speaker, is confront a gas curtailment in the country. Because what we've had for a period of time before, we were being told, and I challenge anyone to say differently, but between 2010 and 2015, we, the country, were being told, Madam Speaker, that there was no gas problem in Trinidad and Tobago. There was no curtailment issue in Trinidad and Tobago. I remember being told frontally by the former Minister of Energy in the corridors that it was maintenance. It was either scheduled maintenance or unscheduled maintenance. What we were faced with immediately upon coming into office in September 2015, Madam Speaker, is a gas industry that was facing curtailment of up to 20%. So not only are we facing a reduction in prices, we face a reduction in oil production and a reduction in the amount of gas we had for sale. And quite recently, this week, we've heard yet another major downstream player, Atlantic LNG, which is the LNG side of our industry, telling us there is an issue. And I find it quite ironic, disheartening, and a little upsetting, Madam Speaker, to sit here and listen to us being told that things were being done. Because we've come in and we're facing a gas industry and an oil industry where the players have told us frontally nothing was being done. Contracts had expired, they should have been renegotiated, nothing was done. There was no real attempt to find and locate, yes, throw out the names of Juniper, etc. But those were already in the proverbial pipeline and coming on stream. Juniper can come on stream, all of these other projects. Truck will come on stream, Angeli will come on stream, etc. It is not going to provide the final solution for everything. So what is the first thing that this government did in order to, first of all, increase our production and increase and stabilize the gas platform in Trinidad and Tobago? For the first time ever in the history of Trinidad and Tobago, Madam Speaker, a government went for cross-border gas. And what this government has been engaged in is not talking about Lauren Manatee that has existed forever, which is actually cross-border. No, we've gone across the border. And we're actually now dealing with the bringing of gas from Dragon to Trinidad and Tobago. And those talks are very, very far advanced. We will be announcing within hopefully a very short time frame that the deal has been signed with respect to it, and that gas is going to come to Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, again, on our revenue side, so we've dealt with the oil and gas situation on revenue, which is a 92% reduction. On the other side, we face an overall decrease of 35%. What have we done as a government, Madam Speaker? Listening to those on the other side and those outside this chamber who are looking to the government for leadership. This government, after the same 14 months of being in office, and actually within 12 months of being in office and bringing the second budget, reported to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And it is an achievement that we managed to reduce the expenditure by $11 billion. And that is no mean feat. So what we have is a drop in revenue, but we've also reduced expenditure. And without the massive job cuts, we've provided a stable platform. I've heard it being asked by those on the other side, outside of this chamber, what was the money spent on? That must be a facetious question, Madam Speaker, because Trinidad and Tobago, after a difficult period in 2016, remains on very, very stable float. The gas curtailment situation. We also heard from Methanex and others crying and pleading with the government to find ways and means to fix this gas curtailment situation. And that is what is being worked on. And as I said a short while ago, Madam Speaker, it's a little bit ironic hearing from the other side that this is something that needs to be focused on, because all international industry experts, and my friend from Caroni Central would attest to this, would have said, to begin the negotiation of these contracts, you do it way in advance and not wait for a crisis situation, which is what we walked into. There were expired contracts in the downstream industry. You don't continue with a downstream industry having gas curtailment issues and negotiating contracts. These are things that should have been done in advance. There was no planning, there was nothing done to fix these issues. So having spoken about the decrease, Madam Speaker, on our oil and gas revenue, we turn now to face the reality of the situation, which is one of declining revenue. And you must look at other means and alternatives to increase revenue as a government. And one of the areas we focused on in increasing revenue are the areas of tobacco and alcohol. And internationally, we all understand that when a government targets increases in taxes in alcohol and tobacco, they're known as sin taxes. And sin taxes, Madam Speaker, are accepted across the world, all over, as an area that one should increase its taxes in a situation such as this. And what we must understand, and the population does understand, Madam Speaker, because the population has accepted these increases in taxes, is that there's a wellness factor. So actually things like alcohol, tobacco, fast food, soft drinks, and these other food products, etc., consumables, when you tax them, you're actually trying to reduce the usage of it, because ultimately we, in this chamber as taxpayers, the citizens who are listening on, Madam Speaker, are the ones who pick up the bill. We pick up the bill through the Ministry of Health, the hospitals, the treatments of all of the ills associated with tobacco smoking and alcohol abuse. So, Madam Speaker, that is an area that was utilized by this government to increase our revenue, because if you want to do those things, then you will pay to do it. And you will pay for the expenses that we, the taxpayers, must foot of providing the healthcare services later on down the road. Madam Speaker, to just touch on the two-tiered income tax system. Again, within recent times, and in particular, Madam Speaker, in the budget debate, we heard, or we were accused on this side of favoring the rich. And we favor those who are rich and those who are wealthy. I sat quietly and thought, it's yet again quite ironic, Madam Speaker, because the area within which we increase the taxes is actually a tax area, a tiered system that is aimed at those, as my colleague from Caroni Central said, who are earning chargeable incomes via salaries, emoluments, etc., of over $1 million. And then the other side is an income tax on profits over $1 million. Madam Speaker, I did a quick bit of research to look at other comparative jurisdictions to see the sort of tax brackets that they have and to try and find comparatives. Barbados, the income tax for companies, corporation tax, is 25%, and the highest tier of tax in Barbados for citizens is 30%. Canada has income tax of up to 58.75%. Guyana, our close neighbor, has a corporation tax of 30% and an income tax of 33.33% as its highest bracket. Jamaica, for the corporation tax, actually has a two-tiered system of 33.33% for large corporations, 25% for small, and a 25% income tax. The USA has 35% corporation tax as a start, and depending on what state you're in, goes from either 0 or 12% added on to that 35% for corporation tax. And interestingly, the income tax bracket goes up to 52.9% income tax. Again, Madam Speaker, I believe that the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, the right-thinking citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, and the vast majority of Trinidad and Tobago accept that due to the current circumstances, especially on the international commodities market of oil and gas, the government of Trinidad and Tobago had to increase the income tax. And it did not increase it for all. So it is not that we favor the rich. It's quite the contrary, Madam Speaker. This government has imposed an increase in taxation on the wealthy of Trinidad and Tobago because we believe at a time like this, everyone must share the burden. And in fact, in the conversations we've been having with private sector, with ICAT, with the various chambers, etc., it has been a very positive conversation, Madam Speaker, contrary to what we might be hearing from the other side. A very positive conversation with things such as investment, the whole move towards PPP projects in a time like this where the government can no longer be, or no longer should it be, the main driver of a thriving economy. All those who have over the years accumulated great amounts of wealth, come forward now. Private sector, come forward now and invest, Madam Speaker, in Trinidad and Tobago for the future generations. The chargeable income, of course, is 30%, either on a salary and emoluments that are over $1 million or your profit. I've heard it said, and we've heard it said on a number of occasions by those on the other side, that people will find ways to evade. Evasion of tax is a crime. Anybody in Trinidad and Tobago who does not know evasion of tax is a crime, it is a crime. Avoidance of tax, however, is a different concept. Every single jurisdiction in the world that has corporation tax and income tax faces the argument of evasion and avoidance. When I studied many moons ago, Madam Speaker, tax law at the University of Nottingham, that was one of the first lessons, the difference between avoidance and evasion. It is accepted. So what do we do as a government? Is it that we say, well, we're not going to try to collect tax? Is it that we say we're not going to increase tax? We're not going to have a tiered tax system because there's going to be a level of evasion? No. And that is why one of the conversations we will take to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago shortly is that of a revenue authority. Because I think every right-thinking citizen of Trinidad and Tobago would accept, Madam Speaker, it's long overdue to have a properly functioning revenue authority that's going to do a service for each one of us here in the room and our children and the citizens outside in a proper collection of taxes. Madam Speaker, this may be an appropriate point, if I may be permitted, to just let the country know that this morning in the High Courts of London, we succeeded once again. The government of Trinidad and Tobago, through NIDCO, succeeded in the Commercial High Courts of London against Banco Santander, and we recovered $256 million for the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. So it means now in total, and I see my friend from Tabaquite on the last, as he did on the last occasion, laughing, how they put in place standing orders, etc. Let me tell the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago this, Madam Speaker. Yes, there were standing orders in place, but a number of these international financial institutions, when the standing orders were demanded, did not pay as they were supposed to pay. They refused. And maybe another government who signed contract addendum number 2 on the eve of an election, waiving our rights to terminate a contract on the basis of bankruptcy and gave that away, would have said, well, I'm not doing it. What we did, Madam Speaker, is we went to the High Courts of London. We had a very good legal team, and we fought them. They fought us hard. And indeed, this morning, they tried to appeal the decision. They asked for a stay, and the Commercial Courts of London said no appeal, no stay. So in total, we recovered just short of $1 billion for the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, that would not have taken place unless there was a proper management and proper performance by the government. Speaking about Revenue Authority, as we've said on the past occasion, and the Honourable Attorney General and myself, we are looking at follow the money. And we're looking at explain your wealth legislation, which again would help the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. Because when we follow the money, and when we ask people to explain wealth that they can't explain, and we get that money back, and we get the assets back, it's not for us. It's not for a P&M government. It is for the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. And that is the commitment, Madam Speaker, of this government. We will pursue the following of the money and the recovery of assets that rightly belong to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, if I may, one of the features that are being introduced by the legislation before us here today are government saving bonds. Government saving bonds, Madam Speaker, are going to provide to our citizenry a new form of income, a new form of savings, a new form of investment. And I've been passed by the Honourable Minister of Finance some statistics here. Madam Speaker, Trinidad and Tobago Investing Public has faced in recent years a consistent annual decline in the ordinary Trinidad and Tobago dollar savings deposits rate. And I know my colleague from Tabaquite has been an advocate for what is going on in the local banking system. And this is one of the areas. Over time, on an annual basis, the amount that an average citizen of Trinidad and Tobago is getting for his or her money in the credit union, as well as the traditional banks and financial institutions, has been declining. So the government sees this as an opportunity to provide our citizens with an increased saving and investment plan. The bonds, as we had heard in the budget, and as the Ministry of Finance will soon roll out, together, I believe, with the central bank, are going to offer 3%, 3.5%, and 3.75% interest rates on the bonds. There are very few instruments in Trinidad and Tobago right now that provide such levels of return on investment. And this government has given that to the people. So take the hard-earned money, invest it in the government savings bonds. And I would expect our friends on the other side to support such a venture. Because what we're doing via the legislation is we're providing the mechanism for different denomination bonds, the rates of interest, the methods of encashment, forms, issues, recordings of such bonds, and the method of holding such bonds. And I personally endorse this, and I think all of those on this side endorse the improvement and the re-establishment of a government savings bond. Of course, what it always also does is that it absorbs some of the liquidity in the system. Because what we've had due to the low rates of interest being offered on deposits is persons have been looking outside for investment opportunities. Bring the money back to Trinidad and invest it in Trinidad, for Trinidad, Madam Speaker. Another area that was talked about, my colleague from Caroni Central said that this government is only raising revenue through an increase in taxation and an increase in debt. And I smiled. In the current climate, we are willing to listen if you think there's any other modality to raising revenue. Of course, what I found, again, ironic, Madam Speaker, is they say it is the citizens who will have to repay the debt. Madam Speaker, I stand here today and I tell the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago that when the general elections were called in June 2015, the period between June 2015 and September 2015, there was a massive increase in short-term borrowing that the country has not been told about. For what, as one example, Madam Speaker, EMBD, Estate Management Business Development, was forced by the cabinet then to borrow $400 million in the month of August 2015 on the eve of an election, and told who to give that money to in the form of 10 contractors. So the money was shared amongst 10 contractors in the month of September and disbursed over 400 million. And this was not a unique situation, Madam Speaker. So to sit here and listen to an increase in debt when those on the other side not only increase debt, but increase debt in an erratic, short-term manner. No one that is so irresponsible, Madam Speaker. You don't borrow short-term. You don't borrow $400 million with a 6-month tenure. When you have a 6-month tenure, sorry, Madam Speaker, how are you going to repay that $400 million when you're investing it in something that is not generating revenue? So when you generate revenue, that's different. It will repay the loan. When you take $400 million in a 6-month loan to build box drains and to pave roads where you're supposed to have 2 inches, but you only pave half an inch, Madam Speaker, have the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago gotten value for money? The answer is no. That was only one example, Madam Speaker. We came in and we found WASA. How much is it? $1.6 billion. TNTech, sorry.
1.6.
They borrowed $1.6 billion. Right? In 6-month paper. $1.6 billion in short-term 6-month paper. How are you going to pay that back? How is TNTech going to repay $1.6 billion? Tell the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago what that money was used for. It was used to pay dividends to TGU so they could get the money from TGU. But what they did not factor is when the 6-month maturity came up, Madam Speaker, debt, they want to talk about debt, 6 months for TNTech to repay $1.6 billion. Impossible.
WASA overdraft $1 billion.
WASA's overdraft. They had 2 instruments, again, short-term financing, over $1 billion. So, Madam Speaker, with the greatest of respect, and in particular respect for the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago and those who are willing to listen, the right-thinking citizens, this government will not engage in that type of behavior. Those are just 3 examples totaling over $3 billion. 3 examples, Madam Speaker, totaling over $3 billion in debt, which cannot be repaid by the entities that took out the loans, that they used to facilitate the taking out of these loans. So when they tell the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago as well, from 2010 to 2015, Madam Speaker, they didn't increase tax. Again, if you didn't increase tax, where did you get the revenue from? Madam Speaker, $10 billion taken from the coffers of NGC. $10 billion. And they want to talk about a gas plan and what we're doing to revitalize and regenerate the gas and oil industry. That $10 billion should have been invested in the cross-border and across-border pipelines to bring the gas to Trinidad and Tobago. Not the Couva, Presal structure that they built as you come over the flyover and you're seeing that they build these structures for CNG and telling the citizens that persons would be able to sell food stuff and food items there at overpriced amounts. There are a number of grounds that they used all over the country, spending hundreds of millions of dollars and not getting value for money. And what else? The Betham wastewater plant. The Betham wastewater plant, we're going to be coming to tell the country very shortly what is the true story with the Betham wastewater plant. Right? The Betham wastewater plant. So don't tell this country with forked tongue that you didn't raise any tax, because you use companies such as NGC who had cash that should have been reinvested into Trinidad and Tobago to take out and dispense $10 billion. I heard them talk again about, my friends on the other side, about the HSF fund. Tell the people of Trinidad and Tobago about the HSF fund. You borrowed money to insert money in the HSF fund. What? That is what happened, Madam Speaker. Right? So when they say that they put money in, tell the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, you borrowed. So the same conversation you want to have about this government borrowing now, where oil and gas prices are an all-time low, production at a low. You all were borrowing to put in the HSF fund to fool the population and say, look, we put money in, again increasing the borrowing limits. Madam Speaker, I heard it said about what we've done in the fiscal space in 14 months, and the cash flow could have been better managed. I again, Madam Speaker, would like them to tell the population, when they came into office in May 2010, June 2010, the citizens, because it is the bank account of the citizens. This is not the bank account of a government. It's not UNC's bank account. It's not PNM's bank account, Madam Speaker. It's our children's bank account. It's our family's bank account. It's those who we don't know. It is the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago's money. It's not PNM money and UNC money. When they came into office in June 2010, Madam Speaker, we were $6 billion in credit. We had over $6 billion in the current account. We weren't in overdraft. When they left in September 2015, adding to the $3 billion in debt I just told you about in short term, Madam Speaker, they left the country in a $9 billion hole of overdraft. So I just heard about the increase in borrowing limit and the increase in overdraft limit. We had to, Madam Speaker, because when we came in 2015, there was nothing left. And the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago must ask these questions. They want to ask where $63 billion went last year. First of all, $63 billion was not spent in the last budget. The minister came and 52. Said he reduced it to 52. So stop trying to mislead the population. It was 52 spent. Trying to manage what you had built up of an expenditure from 2014, when you all came into office. In 2014, total expenditure had risen. You all had risen the total expenditure from 45 billion to 63 billion between 2010 and 2015, from 45 to 63. We have managed now to reduce it down to 52. So don't tell us about how to manage the cash flow. We are certainly, I tell Trinidad and Tobago, doing the best that is possible at this time. I heard talk about investments, Madam Speaker, and how the climate that we've created is one that is not facilitative of investments. And the climate that we've created, persons don't want to invest. Again, an untruth. Up to yesterday, Madam Speaker, I had a meeting with a Japanese corporation, international corporation, that are part of a project here, $1 billion project. And what is the conversation there? Mitsubishi. And I'm proud to say that because of what, and we're coming with the statement in the next occasion.
Member for Naparima, would you like to make an interruption in accordance with Standing Orders 47? So therefore, please conduct yourself in a manner that this House desires. Continue, please, Member.
Okay, yes, tell me about that just now. Madam Speaker, because of the relationship built with this corporation over the last 14 months, they spoke to me yesterday about they now want to invest in the agricultural sector of Trinidad and Tobago. So that's something we, again, as citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, must foster and encourage. Right? What they want to do is they want to invest in the agriculture industry of Trinidad and Tobago. And they're not the only ones. There have been a number of conversations, Madam Speaker, that we've been having with big businesses in Trinidad and Tobago who have heard the cry. They've heard the foreign exchange cry.
St. Anne's West. Your 30 minutes have expired. You're entitled to an extension of 15 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam
may
Speaker.
proceed.
May I avail myself? There are a number of private citizens and corporations in Trinidad and Tobago who have heard the clarion cry of this government to come forward and invest. And they're now having discussions about engaging in big agricultural investment. Of course, when that gets going, it will thankfully reduce the foreign exchange and the importation bill. So these are the things that are going on. In the oil and gas industry, we have a new player, Madam Speaker. And this player, because as everyone will know, we are what you call we have mature fields. So we are a mature industry in oil and gas. We are a mature country, jurisdiction, province, that's the right word, thank you. And Madam Speaker, what that has led to now is companies such as the French company Perenco coming into Trinidad and Tobago. Why would they come into Trinidad and Tobago? Because they believe the climate is a right one. They believe that it's a stable climate. They believe it's somewhere they want to invest in. And they told us as much. They told the Honorable Prime Minister that this is the first step in. And what are they known for? They are known for being able to look at mature fields and maximize mature fields. In fact, what they showed us, what they have done, the work they've done all over the world with mature fields, they've actually on some occasions increased the uptake now from what it was before, even though it's a mature field. So these are the persons that we're attracting to Trinidad and Tobago. It's going beyond the conversation. We've heard about the sandals conversation that is a continuing conversation. Learned friend from Caroni Central talked about diversification. 2 areas of diversification. One, I believe, may have been under him when he talked about services before. IFC. They are pursuing the IFC. Another area he talked about is tourism. This government has gone out and begun the conversation on tourism. You'd have seen a number of RFPs out there for various sites, for persons to come and EOIs, come and express your interest in what you could do with those sites from a hotel point of view. Madam Speaker, the online tax. There was again a lot of misinformation about the online tax. I heard my colleague from Caroni Central talking about why not sea freight and talking about discrimination and disparity. How many more times must the Minister of Finance say it is because we are protecting, as we know, the diaspora out there who send stuff in barrels via shipping and via sea? So we're starting, he said, it's in an embryonic stage. We're starting with an online consumer tax. Consumer is defined under the Electronics Act and does not include businesses. So why go down the road of trying to suggest, why is it always an attempt to misinform the population and mislead the population? That has to stop, Madam Speaker. Because it's Trinidad and Tobago we're talking about, Madam Speaker. So let me just go briefly, Madam Speaker, about the online tax. The sharp increase in the volume of online purchases has been a matter of concern for emerging markets and developing countries alike. This is not unique to Trinidad and Tobago. The recent trend has been that increasing foreign exchange demand, thus weakening the balance of payments and also undermining efforts to develop the domestic manufacturing sector, requires something like an online tax. In Argentina, Madam Speaker, they took steps to restrict online shopping to protect their balance of payments. Their new measures require all packages to be collected at the Customs and Excise office. Madam Speaker, that means packages can't be delivered to your home, to your office. Every single imported package in Argentina, you have to go to Customs and Excise to collect it. And individuals can buy items from abroad for up to US $25 per year tax-free. So every purchase for the cumulative period of a year, once you cross $25, you have to pay 50% online tax in Argentina, not 7%, 50%. In Brazil, you have to pay 6.38% on all foreign exchange operations. Foreign exchange operations include online purchases effected by way of a debit card or credit card or through traveler's checks. Again, we have not stipulated anything additional to credit cards. In New Zealand, they tax their online transactions and customers pay both import duty and GST. So again, Madam Speaker, that's just a quick comparative analysis that there's nothing unique about this. and other countries in the world who are facing similar situations such as ours go to online tax. And if it dampens the purchases by consumers, so be it. Go and purchase from locals. If you want the luxury, pay a tax. We must rebuild the local market. So quite contrary to what's being suggested, we are encouraging the local entrepreneurs. And on the point of local entrepreneurship, because I think it's gone missed, the young people in Trinidad and Tobago are resilient, Madam Speaker, and they're to be applauded for it. There's been a program called Planting Seeds, and the young people have gone forward without foreign exchange, and they found and encouraged all the young entrepreneurs who are willing to come forward, be it in agriculture, be it things as simple as making cards, whatever it is they do, to come forward and promote it. So quite contrary to what's being suggested, as usual, by the other side, our young entrepreneurs are very much resilient, picking up themselves and going forward. In my constituency of Port of Spain North, which is in the middle of the city, young people are finding empty lots and building tilapia tanks. And they're growing and breeding tilapia in the city and heart of Port of Spain. That's the entrepreneurial spirit. I have had young people come to me and tell me they were recently laid off, and they haven't taken the attitude of lying on their backs and screaming. They tell me they're now engaging in agriculture, and that's what we must encourage. So the Ministry of Agriculture must make it easier for the young people who want to go and invest their time, their effort, their sweat, their blood in agriculture to get it done. Madam Speaker, we heard the suggestion about contracts with friends. Again, I find that quite ironic, because we've seen within recent times the billions of dollars paid to certain contractors. And what we also see is a trend to move away from a 10% mobilization fee to a 20% mobilization fee. And to pay that mobilization fee in the month of August 2015, no work done, terminate the contract, so the country loses out on millions of dollars. Madam Speaker, in closing, there's another area I'd like to talk about. Unless this country forgets, the OWTU reminds us. The OWTU reminds us, Madam Speaker, that between 2010 and 2015, a People's Partnership government offered them 0, 0, 0 for the period 2011 to 2014 and refused to budge, sent the matter to the Industrial Court. And let me tell you about that matter in the Industrial Court, Madam Speaker, because I represented the OWTU in that matter. When that government told the OWTU, who were not rolling over and doing what they wanted, they were going to give them, WTU went to court.
7 minutes.
And what happened in that matter, Madam Speaker, for the first time that we can remember, is in addition to the entity, the state entity that was fighting OWTU, they on the other side got the Attorney General to intervene, to bolster and fight the OWTU from the left flank and the right flank. And that is how they operated, with their 0, 0, 0 offer, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, what I'm calling for today, respectfully, is for us to do what is right for Trinidad and Tobago, and try and put aside the cheap political points and the partisan politics. We have a situation where our revenue has fallen. We have a situation where our expenditures are at an all-time high and we're trying to reduce it. That means we must all tighten our belts. And us on this side, as we came into office, one of the first things we did is we took 5% of our salaries, and that 5% of the salary must go now to some good cause, to show the population that we are going to do it as well. And Madam Speaker, it is difficult. We are in difficult times, but our government has to find ways to increase its revenue. I assure my friend from Caroni Central and all others who are willing to listen that we are working assiduously in the oil and gas. With the various oil fields and what we consider to be stranded oil fields, we're looking to see how those can be rejuvenated to get the production up. Similarly with the gas, as you know, there are certain investments taking place, but also we're now looking across border. And we're looking and having conversations not only constrained to any pigeonhole, but to find ways to increase our oil and gas production, which will lead to oil and an increase in revenue when the prices go back up. But in the alternative, when you're faced with trying to find means to find revenue, Madam Speaker, respectfully, it is our suggestion and it's our submission that what's been introduced here and what we're looking at today is very reasonable. Sin taxes on tobacco and alcohol, rich taxes, those who make over $1 million in salary and emoluments, you'll pay an extra 5%. Corporations, let's be real. Corporations like the banks, the energy companies, the conglomerates, they are not going to try to evade the tax. And even if they try, they're not going to be able to avoid and evade everything over $1 million. We saw the other day, this week or last week, Republic Bank declared always a drop in how much was it? $986 million and a dividend of $3, if I remember, over $3. And I think they may have even had an interim dividend. Let some of that money come back for us to look after those in our social networks, Madam Speaker, who are a little less fortunate. And that's what this government is about. So that tax is geared at taxing those who can afford it to help those who can't. And if anybody has a problem with that, let them go and tell those who don't have that we're not going to help them. Madam Speaker, with those few words, I'd like to thank the House and yourself and the country for the continued opportunity to make a contribution. And Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Yes. Well done. Well done.
Member for Tabaquite.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we had a very emotional contribution by the member for Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West, trying to convince the people with the same rhetoric that he has been regurgitating for the last 14 months, but failing to tell the population what he has done to bring relief to the pain that the population has been suffering over the last 14 months. Madam Speaker, before I get into the substance of what I want to contribute, let me just say that the Honourable Minister and Member for Port of Spain North St. Anne's West said that they cut expenditure by 11 billion, but there were no job cuts. I'd like the Minister to explain to us how many contract jobs have not been renewed in the public service. I want him to explain to us how many of the 16,000 jobs reported lost by the CSO last week, how many of those jobs are in the public service. I want him to explain to us how many jobs have been lost in the oil sector and in service companies, oil servicing companies also. I want him to tell me if he has cut expenditure by $11 billion, did that result in the workers of the BIR having to be sent home because they are rat-infested environments and therefore will further lead now to a loss of productive hours in helping you to properly collect revenue in the country? So are you cutting down expenditure but at the same time endangering the lives of people so you're going to shut down parts of the public service? And as a result of that, put the citizens of this country under further pressure. Are you saying that by cutting $11 billion, you're explaining why there have been drug shortages in the country and people cannot get cancer drugs and what have you? Are you saying that by cutting it down by 11 billion, you are now unable to fix the equipment in the hospitals, and that is part of the reason why people are now being given dates up to 2019 for simple services that they ought to get in the hospital? Minister, all this is very true, and you can check the factual basis of what I am saying. Are you saying that by cutting down $11 billion, you are now explaining that you have shut down so many construction projects, sending further so many workers home, shutting down other small businesses that supply the construction sector, and now that you are attempting to start it back, it's going to cost you at least an additional 25 to 30% to start back those jobs. Minister and Member of Parliament for Port of Spain North St. Anne's West, you referred to the OAS monies you have recovered. Minister, you would agree, and you ought to be honest about it and truthful about it, that had NITCO not had proper contractual arrangements, had they not had proper documentation, you would not have been able to collect that money. Therefore, this government acted in good faith to protect the interests of the public of Trinidad and Tobago, Minister. It was properly protected, and that is why we could collect it. That is why you were able to go and get that $246 million plus the other monies that you got. Minister, you spoke a while ago, member for Portsmouth North Sudan West, about your discussions with Mitsubishi. I want to tell you something, Minister. While I was Minister of Foreign Affairs, I was part of a CARICOM delegation to Japan. And there I went and I visited with all the big companies in Japan. And I want to tell you, after that visit, Japan sent the first investment mission to Trinidad in 19 years. They sent them, and that Mitsubishi company came, and that work that is being speaking, that was generated out of that visit and at that time. I'm not taking credit for anything, but we must show that we have continuity of government and that we were also working hard to bring investments into the country. You'll recall, Minister, that the highest personnel from China came here with investment missions to Trinidad during our time also. Exactly. From Panama, from other parts of Latin America, because we had seen Latin America as the new frontier for Trinidad and Tobago, and we were opening up those markets for Trinidad and Tobago. So what you are experiencing is what foundations were laid properly by us. Minister, you spoke about a $1.6 billion short-term loan for WASA, TNTEC, for what have you. That is half of the story. Tell the other half. Go to the bank, and since you call Republic Bank, let Republic Bank come and talk the truth too. Republic Bank was the bank where this was being negotiated. And this was a $1.6 billion loan because they said to us, take it short-term because they could not complete the US dollar loan on time, and that they will complete the US dollar loan and then it will become a long-term loan. Minister, speak the whole story. Don't speak half of the story. Speak the whole story. You stood there, Minister, and you listed out all the countries with graduated tax rates and different tax rates and so on. But you would agree, Minister, that using tax rates in other countries to justify the taxes that you are imposing in this country is not a really good comparison. You are not making a fair comparison because different countries have different economic and national agendas, and different countries have different states of development. And this country was at a particular state of development where if you had managed well over the last 14 months and the many years before that you were in office, you would have not had to descend to this position you are descending to. Minister, you would not have had to do that. You speak about the fact that we left overdraft for you. Yes, the net overdraft was $9 billion, but you are not telling the country that it was built up since January of 2015 and just before that because of the very oil prices. And having said that, that overdraft was paid off in September 2016. But your government, in my view, deliberately delayed the payment, and you could have repaid it in October 2015, because then you had the opportunity to collect taxes of $6.5 billion, the Phoenix Park IPO of $1.5 billion, the TGU money of $4 billion, and a further loan of $1 billion, giving you $13 billion. Pay off the 9, you will still have $4 billion. So yes, you left $6 billion, but don't say we did not make provision for ensuring that you would have money to run the country. Madam Speaker, the profit for NGC increased from $3 billion to $9 billion between 2010 and 2013. And dividends will therefore increase from $1.5 to $4 billion to invest in the country and in the infrastructure of the country to ensure that the people have a better quality of life, to build the schools, yes, to build the health facilities, because the people, you said that money must be spent in the interest of the people, and that is what we did, brought a better quality of life to the people of this country. Madam Speaker, the Honourable Minister and Member for Portsmouth North spoke about he's talking to investors in oil to come and deal with mature fields. Well, Minister, let us talk about the existing oil people in Trinidad, the BPs and the Repsols or whoever, and ask you, what are you doing about the fiscal incentives that they are talking about so that we can make sure that they remain here in this country and continue to do the exploration that will benefit this country? So we have to talk about all of this. We just can't talk about half the story. We have to talk about the whole story. And that is important. Now, the rationale for the online tax was given by the minister. And he said here, a tax that is intended to help manage the increase in foreign exchange outflows from online purchases, reduce revenue leakage, and assist local manufacturers and service companies to compete with overseas retailers. But before I say that, I just want to remind the Honourable Member for Portsmouth North again, St. Anne's West. He spoke about the HSF and said we borrowed money to put in the HSF. Are you saying we borrowed $2.1 billion to put in the HSF between 2010 and 2015 when we left office? That we borrowed that money? But we did leave $5.6 billion in the HSF. And it did increase by $2.1 billion during that period. When you add the almost $12 billion that was left in foreign exchange, then you were left with a potential of about 120 billion TT dollars there. So that's 2 years' budget. 2 years' budget. So, you know, I want to tell the whole story, and must be told. But you did say here now that the online tax is to help manage the increase in foreign exchange outflows from online purchasers, reduce revenue leakage, and assist local manufacturers and service companies. Now, you're assuming that online shopping will decrease because people might be unwilling to pay the extra 7%. You also say that you hope to collect $70 million in taxes. I want to know, what is the basis of your assumption on your calculation that $1 billion is being spent on online shopping, or $150 million US? Where did you get that? What is the basis for that calculation? It will be interesting to know how it was calculated. But Minister of Finance, you're saying that you want to assist local manufacturers and service companies to compete with overseas retailers. But while you say that, isn't it that you are really allowing local retailers who bring in goods by sea to take advantage and charge a price they want to charge, since you are eliminating the opportunity for people to perhaps import these goods at a cheaper price and a better quality? And that is why we say that you are protecting your rich friends, because they are the ones who are the big retailers in the country. And those are the ones you are protecting. What you are doing is you are going back to a situation of ECO and EC1 forms, where people will want to buy something, have to go back to the central bank and stand up in a line and beg for something. You know, the little man in the country who works hard, why are you taking away this opportunity for him to buy a $100 US item? And so on. I want to ask you a question for clarification, Minister of Finance. What is the situation where an item is sent by air through a courier that is consigned to a person as a gift item, for which the person did not pay via an electronic transaction? What is going to happen to that item? It's coming in, he doesn't pay through an electronic transaction. That's a gift. So all of that is subject to 7%, isn't that? Minister, maybe I can sit and ask you if you can answer that. Okay, at the end. And secondly, let's use an example. If someone buys an item for $100 US, and let's just assume $100 US, the rate is now $680 today, so that's let me say $700, because the black market is $750 to $775 right now. And if you go to the airport, you are paying $8 and more for in the cambio for US dollars, right? So you pay $700. Carriage, insurance, freight. cost insurance, freight, what have you. So you come here now. The tax is 20%, $140. So that's $840 now. Where are you charging the 7%? On the 840 or 840 plus 12.5? Where are you charging it? 840 by 7%. 840 plus 12.5. No, you see, that's what I want to calculate. Is it 840 plus the 12.5% VAT? Because if that is the case, what you have effectively done is now the 7% is on the 20%, which is 1.4%. On the 12.5% is another 1.1%, like 2.4%. And plus 7%, 9.4%, you have effectively increased the VAT in the country to 22%. When you add 12.5% plus now the additional, the 7% is no longer 7%, it's more like 10%. So you go up to about 22%. VAT plus the 10%, you have gone up to about 22%.
Very good math story.
Right? So that is what you're really charging persons. So the online tax is, to me, for the small man, a way of punishing people to want to get a better price, higher quality, and to shop in a more convenient fashion. And I don't think that the online tax is going to save you foreign exchange, which you describe as its primary purpose. I think it's a discriminatory tax, discriminating against persons and in terms of the right to choose. Let me tell you, people understand in this country that foreign exchange is important and you have to be conservative and so on and so forth. But when you create a situation where people feel that you are discriminating against them, then people get angry. And people are getting angry with the government, like they got angry with the establishment and they didn't allow Hillary Clinton to win last night. And you are heading in the same direction. And the karma is coming back full circle to you. My colleague, the member for Caroni East, pointed out, Caroni Central, pointed out that for persons engaged in small business and who are legitimate traders using air freight, and you saying that they may be exempted, this tax will further push up their costs and affect their competitiveness compared to the people who are being allowed to bring it in by sea freight, and there are no charges. In other words, what will happen to this small man who goes to Panama and brings in a couple of things by air? He goes there, he ships it by air, and it comes back. And now he has to pay the 7%. Because you really have to give us the assurance that in the customs they are going to be treated fairly. And from what the guys are saying now, that is not happening. Madam Speaker, the government has to think about revenue, not only in terms of increasing taxes. That's not the only way you get revenue in a country. That's not the only way you save foreign exchange or gain foreign exchange. Because you see, there will come a point in time when such continued application and rise in taxes will eventually begin to result in a decrease in government revenue because of a decrease in consumer spending. People are going to reach that point, and the country is going to reach that point. And what the government has to do is, instead of just taxing and taxing and taxing, like which the member for ParlView North said, and try to justify more and more taxes, you have to look at other ways. You have to adopt a new paradigm in terms of products and services to increase revenue and foreign exchange. And one area that you're not looking at, for the last 14 months, you have done nothing to deal with it, is tourism. Look, winning prizes for best hotel rooms will not necessarily bring you more tourists. Don't boast about that. The same volume of tourists may give that hotel preference, but the overall volume of tourists may not necessarily increase. Because you have to differentiate your product. And you have everything going for you to differentiate your product, but we are not differentiating the product. You know, Tobago is paying airlines for seats to bring passengers to Tobago. And one has to ask whether we are really losing money and losing foreign exchange. Because has the THA or the Tourism Development Authority done a study to determine the net economic returns from its investment of tourism, especially in Tobago? Has the government, for example, explored to the fullest extent the import substitution in terms of food? Have you really done it? You know, we are talking about importing food. But has the government examined what it could do to export food? You may say, well, we can't export food like people, the kind of food we buy. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the production of exotic tropical foods in Trinidad that has a ready market in Europe and other parts of the world. What have we done about, for example, our cocoa industry? What are we really doing to produce dark chocolates, which is now something that is in high demand because people realize that it's not going to affect your heart or even good for your heart? What have we done? What have we done about that? You know, we talk about all of this. We have a University of the West Indies with an agricultural department and so on. What are we doing to create agri-business incubators at the university so that we can get people, the students, to engage in business, agri-business, even before they come out of the university? You know, I want to congratulate the member for Chaguanas East when he was minister. The first graduates from the aviation school.
Today.
Graduating today. Congratulations. And when our colleagues were in the opposition, they laughed at this minister, saying, you want to go and put aviation in Cuba. Today, we are creating aviation mechanics or maintenance technicians and so on right there. That is vision. That's what we are talking about. We're talking about people coming here to this country to sell education to us. Canada, US, universities. We can sell, we can export education in terms of providing the environment for that kind of training. We can export education by having universities bring their students to this country for courses in West Indian literature, West Indian history, and what have you, and so on. In medicine, and so on. All that can happen in this country. So you are only thinking about taxing people to increase revenue and foreign exchange. When Dr. Tewarie, like I am, there are so many other ways to increase your foreign exchange and increase revenue. But that's the difference between this side and that side. This is a thinking side, and that is a non-action side. This is a can-do side. This gets it done. This is a side that has always worked harder for the benefit of the people and the country. Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, right now we are wasting our capacity for earning foreign exchange by exporting pepper just picked from the fields and put on the planes, when we can buy a simple piece of equipment and dry that pepper and process it and export it for about 5 times the price that we are now exporting the raw pepper. So, and a member from my arrow will tell you that. Has the government exploited earnings from one of the fastest growing tourism sectors in the world? You know what it is? Wellness tourism in tropical countries, combining yoga and Ayurveda. Wellness centers. And I make these points to show that while the government is intent upon punishing citizens with more taxes, it is not thinking about revenue and foreign exchange possibilities, for which there are many, many in this country. The online tax is a punitive tax. A punitive tax. There are many areas where foreign exchange is being wasted because we are not adding value to what we have in this country. What we have in this country. For example, why should we be importing into this country, or allowed to be imported, wooden furniture, when we have some of the best hardwoods, or have it right there in Guyana from where we could import it, add value to it, or use our teak to make furniture in a knockdown fashion to export to countries across the world? We have good woodworkers in this country, but who is organizing them? The role of government is to facilitate the organization of our small manufacturers and give them the organization and the financial incentives and support so that they can produce, and then somebody can export it. This is what we have to do. And the member for La Hoqueta Dalparo can employ plenty good people, skilled people from your area in furniture manufacturing, cupboard manufacturing. Lots of teak down in that area, in your area and my area. Yeah. I'm waiting for all you to go and open those packing centers that we have, that you want to get them to rust like the Beach High School rust, in order to prove the point. And punishing small farmers who want processing facility space and they cannot get it. Madam Speaker, I am told, because of my research in this matter of online tax, that several courier companies have begun to retrench workers. Yes. Retrench workers. And people are losing their jobs. Economic expansion is the answer, Madam Speaker, not economic contraction, which seems to be the result of current government policy. The current government policy is economic contraction, not economic expansion. In the leakage of foreign exchange, has the government done any study to examine the amount of foreign exchange that is being sent outside of this country through companies like Western Union? By people who supposedly own restaurants in the country, and they come down to the Western Union to send money all over the world that they supposedly say they make in the restaurants. Has the government examined whether these are the same people that own what you call members clubs or casinos in the country? And whether in fact that there are lots and lots of foreign exchange leaving the country through this means? Correct. And they go with cash to the Western Union and what have you to send it? Is the government aware that an underground foreign exchange market for US dollars is prevalent in this country, at which people are buying US dollars for $8 for one? Is the government aware that while US dollars are not readily available in the banks, that people are using wire transfers that are being facilitated by the banks, creating capital flight, that people are opening false companies overseas and sending money to these companies purportedly to bring in imports? These are the things being spoken about openly in the communities. Member for San Fernando East, these are the things openly being spoken. And these are the things that the government should crack down on if it wants to save foreign exchange. But what you do, you punish a fella who have a little credit card and you want to buy a gift for Christmas for his loving wife. So to tax people 7% and leave what I will describe as rivers of foreign exchange to flow out is punishing the honest and leaving the dishonest. Mr. Minister of Finance, you know, yesterday I did something interesting. I have been hearing about the amount of money being lost by this country in taxes. And you are charging companies 5% and people 5% and so on. So I decided to do a little research. So I went out to a restaurant, a Chinese restaurant, in fact, two of them. Because I am told that they have roulette machines in these outlets. Mm-hmm. So for my own purpose, I asked the Gasparilla police to accompany me to these two places because I wanted to be sure the information I collected is correct. So they went and they asked the companies for their receipts for what they were paying for in terms of their roulette machines. And we got the receipts from them, Madam Speaker. I should have shown you this before, Speaker. These are actual receipts.
If you have to display anything, you need to get leave from before.
I'm reading. Fine. It's a Government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago Ministry of Finance document. So they have this roulette machine, and they have 5 other machines, right? What you call one-arm bandit and thing, right? They have 5 machines and the roulette machine. So around the roulette machine, have 12 chairs. And 12 machines accompany 12 chairs. So if you really think about it, there's 12 people playing 12 machines. But when you look at what they pay taxes, they are only paying for 6 machines. So the 12 chairs around the roulette machine become one, for which they are paying $3,000, and $3,000 each for the other 5 machines, amounting to $18,000 in taxes. However, when you go to the other fellow now in Gasparilla, Club Victory Recreation Club, he has 2 roulette machines, and I saw here that he pays $60,000 a year for one roulette machine. And in the restaurant, the same roulette machine, the fellow's paying $3,000 for. So you are losing, in every restaurant that you have, a roulette machine under the guise of where they could get these machines by simply having a bar license. Because if you have a bar license, you could get up to 20 machines They are getting away with $3,000 and you're losing $57,000 on each one of those machines a year.
What happened to the gambling?
Right? So in these restaurants,
members, the crosstalk. Please continue, Member Fatab.
In these restaurants, children, I saw children playing on this machine. Then there's another thing, Minister, you have to look into. You talk about taxes. There are lottery vendors, and there's one particular one I saw yesterday, in which there are these same machines, and they put for amusement only. But you have to buy a coin for $5 to play on the machine. So you're instilling the gambling habit in children very early as amusement only. And we talk about the deterioration in moral and values, and we talk about a gambling society, and we talk about gang development in the country and so on. You see where it comes from? We in this parliament must move to ensure that that gaming bill is passed. We must do that. We must do that, and let us sit down and make sure it's passed. We presented it and we're going to support it.
Yes.
Right? We cannot yes, and I will support it, because I cannot live in a country every day and see children being introduced to gambling, and see what has happened to the destruction of family life because of gambling in this country, and the extent to which family life is deteriorating, that sometimes people don't have money to feed their families, they gamble everything before they reach home in the evening. Let us be clear on some of these matters. These things cross political lines. And this is a responsible opposition that will do what is responsible for the interest of the society. You go to Chaguanas and go into the dump that they sell clothes there, and they have playway going on there, illegal playway going on there, right? They have restaurants side by side with the lotto machines, and they're using the same numbers drawn by the lotto machines. If you draw, let's say 26, and instead of you paying $26 to one, they are offering $30 and $35 to one. So your NLCB is losing money and you're further losing taxes. Why are you not closing these loopholes?
30 minutes have expired. You're entitled to 15 more minutes. Do you intend to be...
Yes, ma'am.
Honourable members, can I get your concurrence that we will take the suspension at the end of the contribution from Member for Tabaquite? Please proceed.
Thank you. You have these members' clubs. Members' clubs. Billions of dollars probably passing through these members' clubs. How much taxes are they paying? How much taxes are they really paying, these members' clubs? There are banks in this country that refuse to take money from the members' clubs. How are they then getting rid of this money? Is this part of the money laundering that's going on in the country? How are they getting rid of this money, member for Laventille West? Is this the money being used to buy guns and drugs in the country and take the lives of young people? What are we doing about it? So we are losing. You're taxing a man 7%, but you're losing all this revenue. This is wrong. This is wrong. And we have to do something about it. Minister of Finance, Diego Martin, West Northeast, I'd like to know whether the interest on these bonds that you are going to raise are tax-free. They are not tax-free. Since you have 4 kinds of bonds in the schedule: government saving bonds, national tax-free saving bonds, tax-free housing bonds, and national saving bonds again. Are these bonds tax-free? If you really want to give a break to fixed income earners, you should give them tax-free bonds. A man who puts in $100,000 into because that's what he can buy, up to $100,000. You give him let's go to the maximum, 3.75%. So he gets $3,750 a year. Does he get this $3,750 at the end of the first year, second year, third year, fourth year? Or does he have to wait until the 7th year before he gets the full sum of $3,750 times 7? Would it be better to give him on an annual basis his interest so that he could reinvest it or he can use it? Because if he's earning $3,750 on $100,000, that means he can be earning about $325 a month, which could be added to his income. And if he's on fixed income or pension, that is quite a nice sum for him. So are these interests going to be paid annually, or are they going to be the end with the value of the bond? And I want to advocate that there be tax-free bonds for the person. I agree with the savings bond. It should be encouraged. Because there are too many persons on fixed income in this country, their money going down, and then some have reached a position where they now have to engage in reverse mortgages. So that at the end of the day, they will have nothing basically, nothing to leave for their children and so on. When they have built their lives to provide some kind of legacy by way of a physical asset, and because they have to engage in borrowing and reverse mortgages, they will virtually have nothing. They lose their property. Now, you are borrowing. The $2 billion is really a way of borrowing from the citizens. Now, I have no problem with that, because it means to say also that you don't have to borrow in US dollars, and therefore you won't have to find foreign exchange to pay if you have to pay in US dollars. So why not borrow more from the local market? Why not borrow more from the local market? You know, the population, though, as I say this, is noting very carefully, with more than a passing interest, that the current government financial policies have a remarkable resemblance to IMF policies. And what we are seeing is a very subtle injection of IMF policies in this country. Very, not so well, very disguised again. And the people are beginning to note it. You see, you have to listen carefully to the Honourable Minister of Finance when he spoke about wage restraint, if he wants to use that word, which is just wage freeze, in terms of 000. That's not the answer. That's not the answer. That's not the answer. Because with inflation rising, people are going to be living poorer. They are not going to be able to buy the same amount of goods and services with the same amount of money if they don't have some increase in their wages. What you have to do in the country is very different. This is why I say you're not a thinking government. You're not an inspirational government. You have to inspire people to exercise a quality of restraint, self-restraint, while they enjoy quality living, but try to use more locally produced products, allowing your scarce foreign exchange to be available for what it has to be available for. Drugs, manufacturing, so that people can keep their jobs as a result of manufacturing, and for other priority services. Maybe we need to talk again to import smaller cars. I saw Honda CEO, Mr. Board, is saying that the best-selling car now they have is the CNG city car. Thanks to the PP government, when we introduced that tax-free in the country and say you wouldn't pay any taxes on CNG. When we introduced that policy of greening the environment, but it was more than that. More than that. More than that. Are we looking at alternative countries as suppliers for the kinds of things we need? Cheaper sources of what we need. Are we doing that? Or are we continuing to think that only in the USA you can get high quality engineering goods, when in fact you can get it at cheaper prices in other countries? We have to change our paradigm of how we do business. Minister of Finance, saving bonds are important, but they have to operate not in a vacuum, but you have to have other policy measures and initiatives and that will encourage a shift in consumer preferences. And you are not providing those incentives, that inspiration for people to do that. All you want to say, look, we have a lower revenue, let me tax people. Let me wait for an increase in oil prices. Let me wait for an increase in gas prices. That is wishful thinking. That's not going to happen for a very long time to come. That's not going to happen. Even the minister predicted $48 to $50 for a barrel of oil. Right now it's down to $44 to $46 a barrel of oil. So that's not, in the last month, that hasn't even become manifest. So I agree that the saving bonds are important because I'm very happy for people on fixed incomes. But $2 billion at a maximum of $100,000 only allow you 20,000 people in the country to participate in these saving bonds. 20,000 persons. A lot more persons, given how many people applied for the IPOs and so on, a lot more people want to invest their money. And maybe we should think about other means of getting the people the opportunity to involve themselves. You see, given the high service charges that banks now inflict upon people. And when you talk about saving bonds, you want to encourage a saving culture. You know, you have to pay the banks now to keep your money. Eh? You actually have to pay the banks to keep your money. If you don't use your money for a month, they take $15 or $25 out. The banks are very, very dishonorable in terms of what they're doing. What we should be doing is trying to build the credit unions in this country, trying to build the credit union movement, to develop a more financially friendly customer environment, and even find ways of helping the credit unions so that loans can be made available at cheaper rates to those persons who, because of their circumstances, are now excluded from being able to borrow money and to build something and develop their lives. You see, I want to propose that a savings culture be encouraged, but it should start early in the life of a child. I thought that the unit trust corporation would be playing a different role in this. And I think that the government should mandate the unit trust, a more deeper role for the unit trust, alongside children, in schools, to foster this culture of savings. You have to start somewhere, and you have to encourage people. And maybe you've got to give people tax credits for saving for children. From the time a child is born, give a tax credit up to $5,000 for the parent who goes and starts a unit trust account. So that by the time the child reaches 20 years, there's about $150,000 given the increases and so on. So that becomes university money for education.
Since you take away gate.
And then you may find that when you give gate to that, you won't have to apply all this means test and put people under pressure and so on. This is what we're talking about. So it's not about just taxing people. You have to find ways to encourage people and grow people. And when you grow people, you grow your country. And when you grow your country, you grow a future. Madam Speaker, you know, this tax, corporation tax, the 5% more to 30, and even on the profits, on the chargeable income and so on. People will pay taxes, you know. But you know what happened in this country right now? Why people evading taxes? People are evading taxes because they're not sure that that government is going to spend their taxes in the right way. They want to know that their taxes are going to be spent for the right things. And that is why people try to evade it. They are responsible citizens in this country. And they want to do that. But while we say that, I want to ask the Minister of Finance for Diego Martin Northeast. You have mentioned, I believe, in this House, that we have lost a lot of revenue as a result of transfer pricing with respect to our gas and so on. And maybe you are referring to Atlantic Gas in particular. And if it is what you said, that we have lost about $10 billion US over the years, what have you done to initiate a process to begin negotiations to get back that money for Trinidad and Tobago? If you are convinced that we have been cheated in terms of the transfer pricing, that gas leaves Trinidad, and when it reaches in the middle of the ocean, it turns around and goes somewhere else, because that is when they get the real price and they benefit and we don't benefit. We got the sources of the primary raw material. What have you done in order to initiate a process that will get us back that money? Because I think that's important. Very, very important. Because those contracts were negotiated quite a long time ago. So, Madam Speaker, I'm very happy to have contributed my little bit to this debate here. Madam Speaker, I say we are losing money. We are losing money. At the last count in 2013, according to this Express report, there were 90 private members clubs at that time. I don't know if it has doubled by now. And this report says mostly offer casino-style video slots. Casino-style. Are these members club paying their $60,000 per roulette machine? Are they paying taxes at all? Are they paying taxes at all? So you see how much money we're losing in this country? Madam Speaker, you're a person who have a great interest in children. I've seen that from the meetings we have had on youth in the Commonwealth Committee and so on. And you will get so annoyed when you go into these restaurants, small restaurants all over the villages, and you see these one-arm bandit machines on the thing, and the parents are waiting there to eat or collect food, and the children are putting their dollar in the machine, and they're playing there. Why are we allowing gambling by children in restaurants? This has to stop. It has to stop. Yes, we are debating about taxes and so on, but they pay $3,000 for those machines, right? For the year. They're making about 50 times that a year on one machine, or more. I'm telling you, madam. So I'm concerned, really concerned about this, despite what I'm talking about here in the taxes. I don't think that the government is doing the kind of job that it should do. Just having a moratorium to collect taxes and get 750 million, or in our time get 900 million, and so that's not enough. That's not enough. If people are sure that their money is going to be used for the right reasons, people are responsible enough to pay their taxes. But they have to trust the government, and right now people don't trust this government that is. They don't trust this government. So everyone trying to break Bish away from it. So, Madam Speaker, with these words, I thank you. And I noted that this year is the 70th year of the right to vote, and I think it's a moment to put that in the record, that it's a freedom and it's a right that we should protect and cherish, and congratulate all of those in the past who worked to ensure that we got that right. Thank you very much.
Members, this House is now suspended. We'll return at 5:10.